I'm driving the car home, so you'll have to walk from the airport. You're always busy with chores and glued to the computer, so you probably need some exercise, huh? It'll take you around 3 hours to get back, so just hang in there. Kyle's words had a harsh edge to them. Once he jumped in the car, he ordered me out, his smirk dripping with contempt, like a kid playing a prank. Kyle was clearly enjoying himself. Faced with his sarcasm, I managed a weak smile and retorted, "It won't take 3 hours, will it? You're sending me back home, right? What's with the drama? Who said anything about 3 hours? It's just a 9-minute walk to my new place." Kyle laughed heartily, clearly not buying my story. His laughter filled the car, mocking me, yet also revealing his doubt. There were all sorts of people around us. Businessmen in suits, families, elderly couples, young women, each with their own agenda. But Kyle, lost in his laughter, paid them no mind. It was like he was in his own world inside the car, oblivious to the hustle and bustle outside. He kept laughing, seemingly joyful, but with a hint of darkness. Alice stopped trying to make me laugh. Do you really expect me to believe such an obvious lie? Quit the nonsense and start walking. It'll be dark soon if you don't hurry. Well, if you're so sure, why don't you come and see for yourself? It might wipe that smile off your face. But honestly, whether you believe me or not, it doesn't bother me at all. Fine. If you're that confident, prove it. But remember, there'll be consequences if you're lying, I challenged. Kyle's irritation was evident as his face twisted in annoyance, his brows furrowing. Kyle's irritation boiled over, his voice booming in the car, drawing surprised looks from those around us. Instead of feeling intimidated, I nearly burst into laughter, knowing Kyle was about to face his own nightmare. With renewed determination, I set off towards my new home. 9 minutes later, Kyle and I stood before an ordinary 12-story apartment building, 3 years old, with a view of departing planes. Kyle seemed taken aback by the building, but quickly masked his surprise with nonchalance. Alice, just admit it. You're lying about moving, aren't you? Stop before you get in trouble for trespassing. Stop fussing and come inside, I replied, though Kyle remained skeptical, following me with a dismissive grunt. Yet, as we rode the elevator to the 5th floor, I sensed unease in his eyes and tension around his mouth. His profile hinted at hidden concerns. Upon reaching the 5th floor and unlocking the apartment door, Kyle's facade crumbled. Anxiety gripped him, and he struggled to maintain confidence, which only made his fear more apparent. As the door swung open, Kyle began to tremble uncontrollably, his face a mixture of shock and fear. I couldn't contain my satisfaction seeing Kyle's reaction. It seemed like he was finally facing reality. "Why are my parents here?" Kyle exclaimed as we faced my angry in-laws. Their red faces hinted at the seriousness of the situation. "You were supposed to be on a trip today. Why are you here, Kyle?" "We set up a fake plan to catch you. We're siding with Alice." Despite their explanation, Kyle looked utterly bewildered. "Why go to all this trouble? Why punish me like this?" Kyle must have been flooded with questions. Sitting cautiously in front of his parents, he sought clarification, but confusion still clouded his expression. "Can someone explain clearly? I don't understand this ambush and punishment." "Stop lying, Kyle. We saw everything. How you left Alice at the airport to walk home." My father-in-law interjected, showing Kyle his smartphone screen. Kyle's eyes widened, sweat beading on his forehead within seconds. The screen showed our exchange at the airport, capturing the moment vividly. Kyle's mocking and loud voice echoed through the video. His expression shifted drastically as he watched, mouth tight, eyes avoiding the screen, realization dawning. Kyle trembled visibly, sweat glistening on his skin. My father-in-law quietly pocketed his phone, his gaze heavy with anger and disappointment. Tension filled the room. "I can't believe Dad recorded this. When did you even film it?" Kyle stammered, his voice strained. "It was at the airport earlier. We'd been watching all along while you were in the car." My father-in-law replied calmly. At the airport, amidst the bustling crowd, Kyle's parents and I had strategically placed ourselves to witness the events firsthand. Kyle had walked straight into my trap, unaware. His parents observed him silently, the room heavy with anticipation. Finally, my mother-in-law broke the silence. "Kyle, we're shocked. How could you leave your spouse stranded at the airport like that?" It was just a heated argument. I didn't mean any harm," Kyle mumbled, his voice trailing off. "It's true, Abandoning the woman you love isn't right. Kyle, why are you laughing? Is this a joke? Kyle's father interrupted, his mother's glare intensifying. In that moment, Kyle froze, his face draining of color, like a deer caught in headlights. The room filled with a heavy, tense silence. Sensing the disappointment more than anger in his parents' expressions, I realized they held high expectations for Kyle. He had always been responsible and dedicated, facing challenges head-on. Everyone admired his character and expected great things from him. Yet beneath that facade was the reality of how he treated me, his wife. The revelation that their beloved son had mistreated his spouse was difficult for them to comprehend. Feeling their emotions, I knew it was time to reveal the truth to Kyle. Despite his father's stern gaze and his mother's subdued anger, I began to speak. Kyle, I've been struggling for a while now. Just 6 months into our marriage, you changed. You were always away on business trips, neglecting us. Then the bullying started, and I couldn't understand why until I discovered the truth. You've been having an affair. I've told your parents not only about the bullying but also about the affair. At the mention of the affair, Kyle's shocked silence shattered, his gaze piercing through me, almost causing me to falter. But Kyle's parents stepped in. Hold on, Kyle. I'll admit to the bullying. I may have gone too far at times. I didn't realize it then, but if it hurt you, Alice, I'm sorry. However, I haven't cheated. You should have evidence before making such serious accusations. I don't have evidence right now, but it's clear you're cheating, just like your father said. Denying it won't make it go away. Wouldn't it be better to come clean now and prevent more pain? What? Accusing me without proof? You're going to confuse my parents? Kyle protested, his usual defensive pattern emerging when his position was challenged. As the tension rose, the rest of us remained calm. I'll say it again. Denying it won't help, because I already know everything. I may not have proof now, but there's a witness. I'll call her here. Just wait. After the call, the intercom buzzed, and within 3 minutes, as the person entered, Kyle froze as if time had stopped. She's the witness. Her name is Karen. But Kyle, you probably recognize her, right? She's your affair partner. Karen has seen your true colors. She was at the airport with your parents. Wait, Karen? Why is she here? I didn't know about this, Kyle exclaimed. Through my investigation, I had discovered Kyle's affair with Karen, an employee from a client company. I had secretly contacted Karen, and our conversation revealed that Kyle had kept his marital status hidden from her during their relationship. Karen believed they were serious, and she was deeply shocked to learn of Kyle's deception. Naturally, Karen couldn't stomach Kyle's lies, so I arranged for her to be at the airport to confront him. When Kyle caught sight of my new apartment, a subtle grimace crossed his face, not because of its location, but because Karen lived in the same building. Kyle probably never imagined I'd be in touch with Karen, which explained his feeble attempt to appear confident. However, his facade crumbled under scrutiny. In fact, my move to this apartment was calculated to bring me closer to Karen. Kyle, even my picking you up from the airport today was part of the plan to expose your true self. While I may not have physical evidence, Karen herself has confessed to the affair, I informed Kyle, a mixture of scorn and disdain coloring my words as I revealed the truth to my unsuspecting husband who had underestimated me. Kyle ended up revealing his true colors all on his own. He probably thought I was just a stay-at-home wife with a computer hobby, assuming his affair would never come to light. It's almost pathetic, really, how I didn't see through it until after we were married, blinded by the idea of a perfect marriage. But now, the truth is crystal clear. Kyle has done something unforgivable. He deceived me, his parents, and Karen, and even when confronted, he tried to deny it all. All Kyle can do now is own up to his mistakes and apologize as soon as possible. There's no way out of this. Denying it will only make things worse for him. Alice, don't you think you're going too far? Surveillance at the airport, an ambush at our new home, and moving into the same building as Karen all over an affair seems extreme, Kyle protested. You don't understand, Kyle. While you might see it as just an affair, your actions have warranted this extreme response. You cheated with Karen, bullied me, and made life unbearable, all while hiding your true self from your own parents. It's time for you to face the reality of what you've done, I said firmly, meeting Kyle's gaze with unwavering clarity. His parents and Karen, echoing my sentiments, fixed stern looks on Kyle. My plan unfolded exactly as intended, catching Kyle off guard and leaving him with no excuses. Slowly, he began to apologize. "I'm so sorry. Karen was so beautiful and young, I couldn't resist lying to win her over. Everything Alice said about the bullying and wanting a divorce is true. I wanted Alice to be the one to initiate it," Kyle admitted, but before he could finish, my father-in-law erupted in rage. Without warning, he hoisted Kyle into the air, Kyle's legs flailing as he struggled. "When was the last time you actually talked to Alice, Kyle? She wanted to support you in every way, even starting her work from home for your sake, and yet you," Kyle was dropped abruptly, coughing and turning his gaze towards me. Since Kyle changed, there had been no meaningful conversation between us. He had stopped listening to anything I said. Even when I talked about my work from home, he dismissed it as just a housewife's hobby. "You've not only lied to Alice, Kyle, but also to Karen, deceiving and potentially ruining the life of a young woman," my father-in-law added sternly. "What a foolish thing to do," my mother-in-law said, her voice trembling as if she might burst into tears. And then there was Kyle, trembling himself, seemingly coming to a realization. His repeated apologies of "I'm so sorry" made it feel like we were dealing with a completely different person, showing genuine remorse. Though still angry, the in-laws appeared slightly relieved that Kyle was sincerely apologizing. "Alice, it's all my fault. I know it's unforgivable, but I'm asking for a fresh start from today. Can we try again?" Kyle apologized to me, his words silencing the room. However, my next actions shocked everyone. "Kyle, you're such a joke to your father, mother, and Karen. Isn't Kyle just ridiculous?" My laughter filled the room, even louder than Kyle's at the airport, leaving everyone puzzled. It may have seemed bizarre, but knowing everything, I couldn't help but laugh. As my laughter subsided, I pulled out a thick envelope from my bag and tossed it at Kyle. "What's this?" Kyle hastily grabbed the envelope, sensing something ominous. With a nervous swallow, he cautiously checked its contents. The moment he did, he trembled so violently it seemed the room itself shook. "That's the result of a separate investigation into your affairs, Kyle. Besides Karen, you were seeing other women during your travels," I revealed. "So essentially, these are your local wives across different regions?" My father-in-law questioned incredulously. "Local wives? Kyle, were you planning to deceive us even further?" Kyle's supposedly sincere apology was just a facade to prevent yet another affair from being exposed. His promises of change were nothing but lies. Perhaps he believed if he could just get through this moment, everything else would somehow sort itself out. If so, he was truly foolish. "Kyle, all you can do now is get a divorce and pay alimony. I never want to see your face again, so let's handle the rest through our lawyers. Don't try to fool me. You claimed there was no evidence, yet you deceived me. Who deceived whom first? Do you finally understand how it feels to be deceived? Damn it, Alice. You'll regret this, you know. A mere housewife like you won't survive on your own. Don't you dare come crawling back to me." Kyle abandoned his facade and approached menacingly, but his threats seemed laughable to me. It would be Kyle who would regret his actions, yet he left our new home with those final words, oblivious to what lay ahead. The tension in the room dissipated, and we all took a seat simultaneously. My in-laws and Karen offered heartfelt apologies. "Alice, we're so sorry for everything. It's our fault for not realizing sooner and causing you such distress. And Karen, we've troubled you deeply. We'll make sure Kyle takes responsibility. Just wait. We'll pursue him relentlessly if necessary. Please, everyone, no need for apologies. Thank you for supporting my plan. Kyle deserves to face the consequences, but there's no need for an extensive pursuit. He'll definitely reach out to us, without a doubt." My in-laws and Karen glanced at me with a slight smile, puzzled by my confidence. They hadn't fully grasped my plan yet, but it wasn't because of overconfidence or denial. It was a certainty I held deep within. I'll say it again. Kyle knows nothing, and I know everything. I could see the path Kyle was heading down clearly. My intention was to watch silently until he faced the consequences of his actions. A month had passed since then. I sat at my computer in our new home, the gentle breeze outside rustling the trees. The serene silence was interrupted by my phone vibrating. The 100th missed call, all from my ex-husband. Taking a deep breath, I answered. As I held the smartphone to my ear, I could hear my ex-husband's voice, a mix of surprise, anxiety, and a glimmer of hope. Finally, you pick up. Why are you ignoring me when I'm in such trouble? Oh, you're in trouble, huh? What happened? I was deceived. One of these local wives turned out to be a scam artist. She took all my money, and now I'm being chased by some scary guys. It's really bad. That sounds tough. Good luck with that. Hey, don't hang up, please. I'm begging you. Just a little help. I've got no money, can't go home. I'm done for without you. Who said, don't come to me with regrets, never come crying back? I knew everything, including the fact you were being deceived, but I chose not to say anything. I thought it was pointless to tell you anything you wouldn't understand without experiencing the consequences firsthand. His voice faded from the call. Perhaps now. Kyle regretted his actions, but I refused to assist him. People like him couldn't grasp others' pain without facing it themselves. You only think of yourself. That's why you're in this situation. I have work to do, so don't call me again. What work? It's just your hobby. I didn't want to have to say this, but my annual income surpasses yours, Kyle. I found success as a web novelist, along with my blog, YouTube channel, and more. I can manage just fine on my own. What? You earn more than me. Wait, can you lend me a little money then? My ex-husband rambled, but I hung up and promptly blocked his number. His selfishness left me sighing deeply until the end. Later, I learned from my in-laws about his situation. Realizing he couldn't rely on me, he turned to them for help. However, they were already aware of his predicament and were furious once again. Despite their anger, he continued making excuses, resulting in his parents disarming him. With nowhere to turn, he fled, changing jobs and relocating. However, it seemed the threatening men pursued him to his new location. He even sought refuge near his parents' home at one point, sending messages of regret and reflection. But it was too late. His actions had consequences, and he bore the weight of that truth.
I never thought I'd find myself in this position, married with a beautiful daughter and another child on the way. Growing up in a small town, I had always dreamed of a better life, one where I could make a difference and provide for my family in ways my parents never could. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. My husband, Ethan, and I had been happily married for 5 years. He was a successful software engineer, and I was a dedicated nurse. Our daughter, Lily, was the light of our lives. She had just turned 4 and was the spitting image of her father, with his warm brown eyes and infectious smile. Everything seemed perfect until the day we received the devastating news that Ethan's father had passed away suddenly. He had been a kind and supportive figure in my life, always treating me like a daughter. His loss left a gaping hole in our family, as we struggled to come to terms with our grief. Ethan's mother, Mona, suggested moving in with us to help with the household and my second pregnancy. At first I was hesitant. Mona and I had never seen eye to eye, but Ethan convinced me that having her around would be beneficial, especially with his frequent work trips. Little did I know that her presence would turn my life upside down. From the moment she moved in, Mona made it clear that she was in charge. She criticized my every move, from the way I cooked to how I raised Lily. "You're too soft on her," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. "She needs discipline, or she'll end up just like you." I tried my best to brush off her comments, focusing on my work and taking care of Lily. But as my pregnancy progressed, I found myself increasingly exhausted and overwhelmed. Ethan was rarely home, and when he was too preoccupied with work to notice the tension between his mother and me. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift at the hospital, I found Mona rearranging the nursery I had spent weeks preparing. "This won't do," she declared, holding up the soft yellow blanket I had lovingly chosen. "The baby needs something more practical, not these frivolous things." I felt my anger rising, but I swallowed my words, not wanting to cause a scene. Instead, I retreated to my room, fighting back tears of frustration and helplessness. As the weeks wore on, Mona's behavior became increasingly intolerable. She would disappear for hours, leaving me to handle all the housework and childcare, only to return with a list of complaints about how I was failing as a wife and mother. I knew I needed to talk to Ethan, to make him understand how much his mother's presence was affecting me. But every time I tried, he would dismiss my concerns, saying that I was overreacting and that his mother meant well. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of Mona's constant criticism and Ethan's inability to see the truth. I longed for an escape, for someone to understand what I was going through. Little did I know that my breaking point was just around the corner, and it would come in the form of a life-threatening illness that would test the limits of my strength and the bonds of my family. As Mona settled into our home, I quickly realized that her offer to help was nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to control every aspect of our lives. She took over the kitchen, insisting on cooking meals that catered to her tastes, disregarding the fact that I was struggling with morning sickness and food aversions. "Jade, you need to eat more," she would chide, pushing a plate of greasy bacon and eggs towards me. "You're eating for two now, and my grandchild needs proper nourishment." I would force myself to take a few bites, fighting the urge to gag, knowing that any protest would only lead to a lecture about my inadequacies as a mother. Mona's presence also put a strain on my relationship with Ethan. She would monopolize his time, insisting on long conversations about his work and his plans for the future, leaving little room for me to connect with my husband. One evening, as I was putting Lily to bed, I overheard Mona talking to Ethan in the living room. "You know, Ethan, you really should consider taking that promotion in New York. It's a fantastic opportunity, and you can't let Jade hold you back." I felt my heart sink as I listened to Ethan's response. "I know, Mom, but it's not that simple. Jade's job is here, and with the baby coming, I don't think it's the right time." "Nonsense," Mona scoffed. "Jade can find work anywhere, and I'll be here to help with the children. You need to think about your career, Ethan. Don't let her selfish desires ruin your chances of success." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could Mona be so dismissive of my needs and desires? And why wasn't Ethan standing up for me? As the days turned into weeks, I found myself growing more and more resentful of Mona's presence in our home. She would criticize the way I dressed, the way I spoke, even the way I breathed. Nothing I did was ever good enough for her. "Really, Jade, you should take better care of yourself," she would say, eyeing my swollen ankles and exhausted face. "No wonder Ethan is always working late. Who would want to come home to this?" Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her see how much she was getting to me. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra shifts at the hospital, desperate for a reprieve from the constant criticism and belittlement. But even at work, I couldn't escape Mona's influence. She would call me constantly, demanding updates on my whereabouts and when I would be home. If I didn't answer right away, she would leave scathing voicemails, accusing me of neglecting my family. I knew I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. My friends were all busy with their own lives, and I didn't want to burden them with my problems. I felt utterly alone, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. One afternoon, as I was leaving the hospital after a particularly grueling shift, I ran into my neighbor, Zoe. She took one look at my tear-stained face and pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, honey, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I broke down, pouring out all the frustrations and pain I had been holding in for so long. Zoe listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. "You can't let her treat you like this, Jade," she said firmly. "You need to stand up for yourself, for your family. Ethan needs to know what's going on, and you need to set some boundaries with Mona." I knew Zoe was right, but the thought of confronting Mona filled me with dread. She had already proven herself to be a master manipulator, and I feared that any attempt to stand up to her would only make things worse. Little did I know that my fears were about to become a reality, and that the price of my silence would be higher than I ever could have imagined. Zoe's words echoed in my mind as I drove home from the hospital, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I knew I needed to talk to Ethan, to make him understand the hell I had been living in since Mona moved in, but the thought of facing his mother's wrath made my stomach churn. As I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that was sure to come. I walked into the house, expecting to find Mona waiting for me with her usual barrage of insults and criticisms, but instead, I was greeted by an eerie silence. I made my way to the living room, where I found Ethan sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his eyes red and puffy from crying. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. "It's Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "She's gone." For a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Mona had finally realized the error of her ways and decided to leave on her own. But as I looked closer at Ethan's face, I realized that something was terribly wrong. "What do you mean she's gone?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "She left a note," Ethan said, handing me a piece of paper. "She said she can't stand to be around us anymore, that we're ungrateful and selfish, and that she's going to stay with her friends until we come to our senses." I read the note, my eyes widening with each word. Mona had painted herself as the victim, claiming that I had driven her away with my constant demands and lack of appreciation for all she had done for us. "This is ridiculous," I said, crumpling the note in my fist. "She's the one who's been making our lives miserable, not the other way around." Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Jade. Mom has always been there for me, and now she's saying all these terrible things about you. I just don't know what to do." I felt my anger rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Ethan, you have to trust me. Your mother has been manipulating you, manipulating all of us. She's not the victim here. We are." But even as I spoke the words, I could see the doubt in Ethan's eyes. Mona had always been his rock, his constant support, and the thought of her being anything less than perfect was almost too much for him to bear. Over the next few days, I tried my best to carry on as normal, but the weight of Mona's absence hung heavy in the air. Ethan was distant, spending long hours at work and barely speaking to me when he was home. Lily, too, seemed to sense that something was wrong, clinging to me more than usual and asking constantly when Grandma would be coming back. I knew I needed to do something, to find a way to make Ethan see the truth about his mother, but I was at a loss. Every time I tried to bring up the subject, he would shut down, retreating into himself and leaving me feeling more alone than ever. It was during one of these moments of despair that I finally broke down, collapsing onto the bed in a fit of tears. I felt like I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of Mona's manipulation and Ethan's inability to see the truth. As I lay there, my body racked with sobs, I heard a soft knock on the door. I looked up to see Zoe standing there, her face filled with concern. "Oh, Jade," she said, rushing to my side and pulling me into a hug. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea things had gotten this bad." I clung to her, pouring out all the pain and frustration I had been holding in for so long. Zoe listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. "You can't let her win, Jade," she said firmly. "You have to keep fighting, for yourself and for your family. Ethan will come around eventually, but you have to be strong until then." I knew Zoe was right, but I also knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. Mona had already proven herself to be a formidable opponent, and I feared that the price of standing up to her would be higher than I ever could have imagined. As the weeks passed, I threw myself into my work, taking on extra shifts at the hospital in a desperate attempt to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home. Ethan was rarely around, his business trips becoming more frequent and longer in duration. I knew he was using work as an excuse to avoid dealing with the tension between his mother and me, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him about it. One evening, as I was preparing dinner for Lily and myself, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I tried to ignore it, attributing it to the stress and exhaustion of the past few months, but as the night wore on, the pain only intensified. By the time I put Lily to bed, I was struggling to breathe, my vision blurring at the edges. I knew I needed help, but Ethan was out of town, and I couldn't bear the thought of calling Mona. In a moment of desperation, I reached for my phone and dialed Zoe's number. "Jade, what's wrong?" she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Zoe, I need help," I gasped, my words coming out in short, painful bursts. "I think there's something wrong with the baby." Zoe was at my door in minutes, her face pale with worry. She took one look at me and immediately called for an ambulance. As we waited for the paramedics to arrive, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I knew that my condition was serious, and I feared for the life of my unborn child. When the ambulance finally arrived, I was barely conscious, my body racked with pain and fever. The paramedics worked quickly, loading me onto a stretcher and rushing me to the hospital. As I lay in the emergency room, hooked up to a myriad of machines and monitors, I overheard the doctors discussing my condition. "Pneumonia," they said, their voices grave. "And she's 7 months pregnant. We need to act fast." I felt a surge of panic wash over me. Pneumonia was serious enough on its own, but coupled with my pregnancy, it could be deadly. As the doctors worked to stabilize my condition, I drifted in and out of consciousness, my mind filled with thoughts of Lily and my unborn child. I knew I needed to fight, to be strong for them, but I could feel my body weakening with each passing minute. It was during one of these moments of lucidity that I remembered Mona. Despite everything she had put me through, I knew that she needed to be informed of my condition. I asked Zoe to contact her, hoping that she would put aside her animosity and be there for her son and grandchildren. But as the hours passed and Mona failed to appear, I began to realize the depths of her cruelty. Even in my darkest hour, she couldn't be bothered to show an ounce of compassion or concern. Ethan, on the other hand, rushed to my side as soon as he received word of my condition. He sat by my bedside, holding my hand and whispering words of encouragement, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Jade," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have been here for you, for our family. I promise things will be different from now on." I wanted to believe him, to take comfort in his words, but I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. Mona's influence had taken root, and it would take more than a few apologies to undo the damage she had caused. As I lay there, fighting for my life and the life of my unborn child, I couldn't help but wonder how things had gotten so bad. How had I allowed myself to become so isolated, so alone in my struggles? And how could I ever hope to rebuild my family in the face of such overwhelming adversity? But even in my darkest moments, I knew that I had to keep fighting, for Lily, for my unborn child, and for the life I knew we deserved. No matter what it took, I would find a way to break free from Mona's grip and reclaim the happiness that had been stolen from us. As I fought for my life in the hospital, Zoe remained by my side, a constant source of support and comfort. She sat with me for hours, holding my hand and wiping the sweat from my brow, her eyes filled with concern and compassion. "You're going to get through this, Jade," she said, her voice firm with conviction. "You're one of the strongest people I know, and you have so much to live for." I wanted to believe her, to take strength from her words, but the pain and exhaustion were overwhelming. I could feel my body weakening with each passing hour, and I feared that I might not have the strength to keep fighting. It was during one of these moments of despair that Ethan finally returned to the hospital, his face drawn and haggard. He had been away on business when I first fell ill, and it had taken him nearly 2 days to make it back to the city. "Jade, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking as he took my hand in his. "I should have been here sooner. I never should have left you alone with my mother." I could see the guilt and regret in his eyes, and I knew that he was finally beginning to understand the toll that Mona's behavior had taken on our family. "It's not your fault, Ethan," I said, my voice weak and raspy. "You couldn't have known how bad things would get." But even as I spoke the words, I knew that they weren't entirely true. Ethan had seen the way his mother treated me, had heard the cruel words she spoke and the manipulative games she played. He had chosen to ignore it, to bury his head in the sand and hope that things would get better on their own. And now, as I lay in the hospital bed, fighting for my life and the life of our unborn child, the consequences of that choice had become all too clear. Over the next few days, my condition began to improve, thanks in no small part to the tireless efforts of the hospital staff. They worked around the clock to monitor my vital signs and adjust my medications, doing everything in their power to ensure that both the baby and I remained stable. Ethan rarely left my side during this time. His attention focused solely on my well-being and the well-being of our child. He slept in a chair by my bed, holding my hand and whispering words of love and encouragement, his eyes filled with a newfound determination. "I promise, Jade, things will be different from now on," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "I won't let my mother hurt you or our family ever again." I wanted to believe him, to take comfort in his words, but a part of me couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late. Mona's influence had taken root, and it would take more than a few promises to undo the damage she had caused. As the days turned into weeks, I slowly began to regain my strength, my body healing from the ravages of the pneumonia. The baby, too, seemed to be thriving, growing stronger with each passing day. But even as my physical health improved, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. Mona's absence weighed heavily on my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder what she was planning. What new scheme she might be hatching to tear our family apart. It was during one of these moments of anxiety that Zoe came to visit, her face filled with a mixture of concern and determination. "Jade, there's something you need to know," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I overheard Mona talking to one of her friends on the phone. She's planning to leave for a luxury cruise tomorrow, and she doesn't intend to come back until after the baby is born." I felt a surge of anger wash over me, hot and fierce. How could Mona be so selfish, so cruel? How could she abandon her own grandchild in their hour of need? But even as the anger burned within me, I knew that I couldn't let it consume me. I had to stay focused on my own recovery, on the health and well-being of my unborn child. And so, with a heavy heart and a newfound sense of determination, I began to plan for the future, a future without Mona and her toxic influence. I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but I also knew that I had the strength and the support to see it through. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I would fight for my family, for the life we deserved, and I would do it with the love and support of those who truly cared for me, those who would stand by my side through thick and thin. Mona lounged on the deck of the luxury cruise ship, sipping a cocktail and basking in the warm sun. She had been looking forward to this trip for months, a chance to escape the drama and responsibilities of family life and indulge in some much-needed relaxation. As she lay there, her mind drifted to thoughts of Jade and the baby. She knew that her daughter-in-law was still in the hospital, fighting for her life, but she couldn't bring herself to feel any real concern. In her mind, Jade had brought this on herself, with her constant demands and selfish behavior. Suddenly, Mona's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced at the screen, expecting to see a text from one of her friends, but instead, she saw a voicemail from Lily. Curious, she pressed play and held the phone to her ear. At first, she couldn't make out what her granddaughter was saying, her voice muffled and distant. But as she listened more closely, she felt a chill run down her spine. "Grandma, please come home," Lily pleaded, her voice thick with tears. "Mommy is really sick, and the doctors say she might not make it. We need you here, Grandma. Please come back." Mona felt a surge of panic wash over her. She had never heard Lily sound so frightened, so desperate, and the thought of Jade actually dying, of leaving her grandchildren without a mother, was almost too much to bear. Without a second thought, Mona grabbed her bags and rushed off the ship, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew that she needed to get to the hospital as quickly as possible to be there for her son and grandchildren in their hour of need. As she raced through the airport, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Mona couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over her. She had always known that her behavior towards Jade was wrong, that her constant criticism and manipulation were taking a toll on their family. But she had never imagined that it would come to this, that her own selfishness could put the life of her unborn grandchild at risk. When she finally arrived at the hospital, Mona was met with a sight that made her blood run cold. Ethan was standing outside Jade's room, his face twisted with rage and disgust. "How dare you show your face here?" he spat, his voice shaking with anger. "After everything you've done, after all the pain you've caused, you have the nerve to come crawling back now?" Mona opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She could see the hurt and betrayal in her son's eyes, and she knew that there was nothing she could say to make it right. "Jade is fighting for her life in there," Ethan continued, his voice rising with each word. "She's been through hell, and it's all because of you. Your constant criticism, your manipulative games, your selfish behavior. You've torn this family apart, and now you have the audacity to show up here and play the concerned grandmother?" Mona felt tears streaming down her face, hot and shameful. She knew that Ethan was right, that she had no one to blame but herself for the state of their family. "Ethan, please," she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I've made mistakes, and I'm so sorry for all the pain I've caused. But please let me see Jade. Let me be there for her, for all of you." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, his eyes hard and unforgiving. Finally, he stepped aside, allowing her to enter the room. As Mona approached Jade's bedside, she felt a wave of guilt and shame wash over her. Her daughter-in-law lay there, pale and still, her body hooked up to a myriad of machines and monitors. "Jade, I'm so sorry," Mona whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I never meant for things to get this bad. I never meant to hurt you or our family." But even as she spoke the words, Mona knew that they were too little, too late. The damage had been done, and it would take more than a few apologies to make things right. As she sat there holding Jade's hand and praying for a miracle, Mona knew that she had a long road ahead of her, a road of redemption, of making amends for all the pain and suffering she had caused. And she knew that it would be a difficult journey, one that would test her in ways she had never been tested before. But for the sake of her family, for the sake of the precious life growing inside Jade, she knew that she had to try. As I lay in the hospital bed, fighting through the haze of pain and medication, I could hear the sound of raised voices coming from the hallway. At first, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but as the voices grew louder and more agitated, I realized that it was Ethan and Mona. "How could you be so selfish, so cruel?" Ethan shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "Jade is lying in there, fighting for her life, and you couldn't even be bothered to show up until now?" "Ethan, please," Mona pleaded, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how serious it was. I thought—" "You thought what?" Ethan interrupted, his voice dripping with disgust. "That you could just abandon your family, go off on some luxury cruise and everything would be fine? That Jade would just magically get better, and you could come back and play the doting grandmother?" I could hear the shame and regret in Mona's voice as she tried to explain herself, but Ethan wasn't having it. He had seen the toll that her behavior had taken on our family, the pain and suffering that she had caused, and he wasn't about to let her off the hook. "You know, I used to look up to you," Ethan said, his voice growing quieter but no less intense. "I used to think that you were the strongest, most capable person I knew, but now I see you for what you really are. A selfish, manipulative woman who cares more about her own pleasure than the well-being of her own family." Mona started to protest, but Ethan cut her off. "No, I don't want to hear it. You've had your chance, and you blew it. You've caused nothing but pain and heartache for Jade, for our children, and for me, and I won't stand for it anymore." I could hear the sound of footsteps, and then the door to my room opened. Ethan walked in, his face drawn and haggard, but his eyes filled with a fierce determination. "Jade, I'm so sorry," he said, taking my hand in his. "I'm sorry for not standing up to my mother sooner, for not protecting you the way I should have, but I promise things will be different from now on." I nodded, too weak to speak, but I could feel the love and support radiating from him. He had finally seen the truth about his mother, had finally understood the depths of her cruelty and manipulation, and he was ready to make a change. Over the next few days, as I slowly regained my strength, Ethan rarely left my side. He sat with me for hours, holding my hand and talking about our future, about the life we would build together without Mona's toxic influence. And when the time came for me to give birth, he was right there beside me, coaching me through every contraction and cheering me on as I brought our beautiful baby boy into the world. As I held my son in my arms, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and renewal wash over me. We had been through so much, had faced such incredible adversity, but we had come out the other side stronger and more united than ever before. And as I looked into Ethan's eyes, I knew that we would face whatever challenges lay ahead together, as a family. We had each other, and we had the love and support of those who truly cared for us. And that was all we needed to build the life we deserved. In the days and weeks that followed, I learned that Mona's friends, horrified by her behavior, had cut all ties with her. She was left alone and isolated, forced to confront the consequences of her actions and the pain she had caused. But for us, life went on. We moved forward, focusing on our family and the love we shared. And though the scars of the past would always be with us, we knew that we had the strength and resilience to overcome anything that came our way. As I watched Ethan play with our children, his face filled with joy and laughter, I knew that we had finally found the happiness and peace that we had always deserved. And I knew that, no matter what the future held, we would face it together, united in our love and our commitment to each other. As the weeks turned into months, I slowly began to heal, both physically and emotionally. The birth of our son had brought a newfound sense of joy and purpose to our lives, and Ethan and I were determined to cherish every moment we had together as a family. But even as we celebrated this new chapter in our lives, the specter of Mona's betrayal still loomed large. I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and resentment that had taken root in my heart, the sense that she had gotten away with her cruelty and manipulation for far too long. It was during one of my follow-up appointments with the doctor that I finally learned the true extent of Mona's isolation. As I sat in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine, I overheard two of the nurses talking about her. "Did you hear about that awful woman who abandoned her daughter-in-law when she was in the hospital?" one of them said, her voice dripping with disgust. "Yeah, I heard she went on some fancy cruise instead of being there for her family," the other replied. "What kind of monster does that?" I felt a surge of vindication wash over me. It seemed that Mona's actions had finally caught up with her, that the people in her life were starting to see her for who she really was. Later that day, as I was putting away some of the baby's clothes, I found a letter tucked away in the back of the drawer. It was from Mona, written in her familiar spidery handwriting. "Jade," the letter began, "I know that I have caused you and our family a great deal of pain, and for that I am truly sorry. I have spent the last few months reflecting on my actions, and I have come to realize the depths of my selfishness and cruelty." I felt my heart start to race as I read on, my eyes scanning the page for any hint of sincerity or remorse. "I know that I can never make up for the harm I have caused, but I want you to know that I am committed to being a better person, a better mother, and a better grandmother. I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I stared at the letter for a long moment, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. A part of me wanted to believe her, to think that she had truly changed and was ready to make amends. But another part of me, the part that had endured years of her manipulation and abuse, knew better. I had seen firsthand the depths of her cruelty, the way she had torn our family apart with her selfish behavior. And so, with a heavy heart, I tore the letter into pieces, watching as the fragments fluttered to the ground like confetti. I knew that I could never forgive Mona, could never let her back into our lives after all the pain she had caused. But I also knew that I couldn't let her betrayal define me, couldn't let it poison the love and happiness that Ethan and I had worked so hard to build. And so, I made a choice to focus on the future, on the life we had created together. A choice to surround myself with people who truly cared for me, who would stand by my side through thick and thin. In the years that followed, Ethan and I watched our children grow and thrive, our love for each other deepening with each passing day. We faced our challenges head-on, united in our commitment to each other and our family. And though the scars of the past would always be with us, we knew that we had the strength and resilience to overcome anything that came our way. As I watched Lily and our son play together in the backyard, their laughter ringing out like music, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had weathered the storm, had emerged from the darkness stronger and more united than ever before. And I knew that, no matter what the future held, we would face it together, bound by the unbreakable bonds of love and family. Mona's betrayal had taught me the true price of selfishness and cruelty, but it had also shown me the incredible power of forgiveness and hope. And that, I knew, was a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. "What are you doing, Mitchell? Do you think she'll ever find out? Isn't this exciting?" That voice. My heart faltered at the sound of it. I had come home early, feeling uneasy for reasons I couldn't explain. Now, standing in the hallway, I could hear laughter and clinking glasses coming from the living room. Cautiously stepping forward, I peeked through the slightly ajar door. My husband Mitchell, my best friend Natalie, and my mother Donna were all sitting there, a half-empty bottle of wine on the table, surrounded by an aura of infectious joy. Mitchell's arm was around Natalie, and my mother was sitting so close to him, their knees almost touching. "What's so funny?" I stepped into the room, my voice heavier than I intended. The laughter died. They looked at me, stunned, eyes wide with guilt. Donna was the first to speak, masking her surprise with a too bright smile. "Casey, you're home early. We were just catching up." "Obviously," I said, my eyes narrowing. "What's the occasion?" Natalie, twirling the wineglass, tried to play it off. "Just a casual get-together. We've been missing you." I scrutinized their expressions, the forced ease and underlying tension. My stomach churned. "Missing me? Since when?" Mitchell rose from the couch, walking towards me with an easy smile that no longer reassured me. "Hey, babe, you okay? You look pale." Ignoring his concern, I focused on their little setup. "So, what's this intimate gathering about? Something you wanted to share?" Donna set her glass down, her hand trembling slightly. "You're reading too much into it, darling. Relax." I was anything but relaxed. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Really? Because from here it looks like a private party I wasn't invited to." A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, flashed in Mitchell's eyes, but he quickly smothered it with a laugh. "Casey, come on, it's not like that. We just needed to unwind a bit." Natalie nodded, but her agreement felt hollow, like an echo in a vast, empty space. "Yeah, we just needed a break, you know? Everything's been stressful for everyone." I looked at my husband, my best friend, and my mother, feeling the walls closing in, the air heavy with deceit. "Of course," I said, though I didn't believe a word. I stood there, feeling shattered but determined not to expose my hurt. "Well, don't let me interrupt your good time." I turned and walked away, my steps determined, my fists clenched tight. In the quiet of the hallway, their laughter resumed. But it sounded different now, forced, like a brittle shell hiding the rot beneath. I'd witnessed enough to know something was terribly wrong. Beneath my calm exterior, the reality of their betrayal burned, each laugh and every whisper like a blade slicing through my skin. In that moment, I knew. This was just the beginning. I had to uncover the full extent of their deception. The laughter sounded different now. It haunted me as I climbed the stairs, each step feeling like I was dragging a boulder. I pushed open the door to my bedroom and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the fragments of my unraveling life. A flood of memories hit me. Growing up, it was just Mom and me. We were so close. Even now, her betrayal stung like a fresh wound. I remembered how she would hold my hand, telling me everything would be okay when things were tough. All lies now. Pushing the painful thoughts aside, I focused on my career. It had always been my escape, the one place where I felt in control. I'd worked hard for years, climbing the corporate ladder. All the late nights, the missed family dinners. Mitchell had supported me through it all, or so I thought. Now it seemed like it had given him time to form his twisted trinity. A faint knock on the door pulled me back to reality. "Casey, can we talk?" Mitchell's voice was on the other side. I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to stay calm. I opened the door. "What do you want?" He looked uncomfortable, scratching the back of his neck. "I noticed you weren't yourself downstairs. Are you okay?" "I don't know, Mitchell. You tell me." My voice was cold, distant. He stepped closer, reaching out, but I stepped back. "Casey, please, you're overreacting. Nothing's going on." "Overreacting?" The word bounced around in my head. "Is that how you see it? Just friends hanging out, right?" He sighed, frustration creeping into his tone. "Yes, that's all it is. You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I laughed, a bitter sound. Bigger than it needs to be? My husband, my best friend, and my mother hiding things from me. Yeah, I must be crazy. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Natalie. "Hey, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. They really thought they could brush this under the rug. Mitchell was watching, sensing the shift in my mood. "Natalie wants to talk. I guess it's time for a group therapy session, huh?" His face paled. "Casey, don't do this." Ignoring him, I walked past, heading back to the living room. Donna and Natalie looked up as I entered, sensing the storm approaching. "Natalie, you wanted to talk. Let's clear this up right now." Natalie stood hesitant. "Casey, we're just friends. You came in at the wrong time." Donna nodded, her eyes pleading. "Darling, please, it's not what you think." I took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of strength. "Enough. I'm not blind. I hear things. I see things. How long will you keep lying to my face? The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. The tight thread holding my life together was unraveling fast. One thing was clear. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of a battle, and I wasn't backing down. The air in the living room was stifling. I felt everyone's eyes on me, searching for a crack in my resolve, but I stood firm. "Natalie," I said, my voice cold and steady, "if it's all innocent, why don't you explain the odd messages, the secret meetings?" Natalie shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting toward Mitchell and Donna. "Casey, it's not a big deal. We've just been close lately, that's all." "Close?" I spat the word back at her. "How close exactly?" Her silence was damning. Mitchell stepped in, his tone a mix of annoyance and desperation. "You're being paranoid. There's nothing going on. We're friends, that's it." I shook my head, anger bubbling over. Friends don't hide things. Friends don't act like this behind someone's back. Donna tried to soften the blow, reaching out to me. "Honey, you're working so hard. We just wanted to make sure you had support, people to lean on." My mother's attempt at justification pushed me over the edge. "Support? By excluding and lying to me? That's how you support me?" Thus, I could see Mitchell's patience wearing thin. "We didn't want to bother you with every little thing, Casey. You're always busy." "Busy? Right," I said, nodding, letting the word hang in the air. "So busy that I missed the signs, the little things that didn't add up." Mitchell's frustration spilled out. "This isn't what you think it is. Why can't you just accept that we were trying to make things easier for you?" "Easier?" I laughed bitterly. "By making me feel like an outsider in my own life?" Natalie, her voice shaky, tried to interject. "Casey, please, we never meant to hurt you." "Never meant to hurt me? Then why does it feel like you've stabbed me in the back?" I could barely control the tremor in my voice. "I gave my life to this family. I trusted you all." Donna's eyes filled with tears, but I had no sympathy left. "All right, you've made your point," she said quietly, "but let's not blow this out of proportion." "Out of proportion?" I let out a breath of pure disbelief. "You've been hiding something huge from me, and you want to downplay it?" Hannah's small voice drifted from the hallway. "Mommy, what's going on?" I turned to see my daughter, her innocent eyes wide with worry. My heart ached, but I forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetie. Just grown-up talk." As Hannah shuffled back to her room, I looked at the three of them, a husband, a best friend, and a mother who had conspired to keep me in the dark. "I'm done with this conversation," I declared, my voice firm. "You think I'm overreacting? Fine, but I'm not done digging." With that, I left the room, the bitter taste of betrayal thick in my mouth. Whatever was going on, I was going to find out, and there would be a reckoning. The tension in the house thickened each day. I couldn't look at Mitchell, Natalie, or Donna without feeling a surge of anger. Hannah noticed my distraction but was too young to understand. Meanwhile, the odd behaviors were piling up, one by one, painting an increasingly sinister picture. It started with the phone calls. Whenever I walked into the room, Donna would end her conversation abruptly. "Just catching up with an old friend," she'd say, smiling too brightly. Then there were the glances between Mitchell and Natalie. They exchanged looks that felt like silent agreements, words left unspoken, connected by something I wasn't part of. Late-night meetings, whispers in the kitchen, flipping their phones upside down. Every small action screamed secrecy. One evening, I caught a glimpse of a flirtatious text on Mitchell's phone before he quickly locked the screen. My stomach turned, but I stayed calm. "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Just a work thing," he replied, too quickly. My suspicion solidified. I needed more than snippets and gut feelings. I needed undeniable proof. I began paying closer attention. Mitchell's car parked at odd places, Donna's slips about where she'd been, and Natalie's vague explanations about her whereabouts. All clues leading to a single horrific conclusion. They were seeing each other behind my back. As I mentally connected the dots, I confronted them. I gathered Mitchell, Natalie, and Donna in the living room, the same place where my world had started unraveling. "We need to talk." "Seriously," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. They exchanged nervous glances. Donna tried to play it cool. "What's this about, darling?" "No more lies," I demanded. "I know something's been going on. I want the truth." Mitchell looked to the floor, unable to meet my gaze. Natalie's face flushed red. Donna took a deep breath, finally breaking the silence. All right, Casey, you want the truth? Here it is. A coldness swept over me as she continued. We've been involved, all of us, in a relationship together. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. A relationship? You mean like an affair? All of you? Donna nodded. We didn't mean for it to happen this way, but yes, we've been involved. Polyamorous. Mitchell finally looked up, guilt and relief mingling in his eyes. I'm sorry, Casey. We didn't know how to tell you. We didn't want to hurt you. Natalie added quickly, We didn't choose this to hurt you, Casey. It just happened. I stared at them, the reality of their betrayal sinking in. Hurt me? You think saying that in such a calm tone makes it any less painful? The facade of my normal life shattered. I felt anger, betrayal, and shock battling within me, but beneath it all, a fierce determination rose. I looked each of them in the eye, a final resolve hardening in my voice. This is not over. You will regret every bit of this. Their expressions twisted in a mix of fear and uncertainty. They should be scared. I turned and left, my mind racing with plans. My revenge was just beginning. Silence engulfed the room after I walked out. The raw mix of emotions inside me was hard to contain, but I knew I had to stay focused. After a while, I went to Hannah's room and quietly sat by her bed, watching her sleep, her breath even and calm, a soothing contrast to the storm I faced. The next morning, I called my sister Erin. Can I come over? It's urgent, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course, Casey. What's going on? She asked, concern coloring her tone. It's complicated. I'll explain when I get there. I hung up, packed a small bag, and gently woke Hannah. We're going on a little trip to Aunt Erin's, okay? Hannah's eyes lit up. Yay! Can we have pancakes for breakfast there? I forced a smile. Absolutely. Leaving Mitchell, Donna, and Natalie behind felt like shedding a skin. I drove with a clear purpose, needing the support Erin always provided. When I arrived at Erin's place, she greeted me with a warm hug, instantly knowing something was really wrong. What happened? She asked gently as we settled on her couch. They've been involved. Mitchell, Natalie, and Mom. Behind my back, I managed to say, feeling the sting as fresh as when I discovered the truth. Erin's eyes widened in shock. What? How could they? I can't believe this. Anger flashed across her face. You don't deserve this, Casey. I need your help. I have to protect Hannah and figure out my next steps, I said, my voice steadying with resolve. Erin nodded immediately. You know I'm with you. Whatever you need. Our first move was to meet with a lawyer. I planned to pursue legal separation from Mitchell and ensure Hannah's custody arrangements protected her from the toxicity. Erin stayed with Hannah to keep things normal for her while I focused on dismantling the life that had become a lie. Later, when I went to pick up Hannah, I faced Mitchell. His eyes were filled with a mix of regret and helplessness. Casey, can we talk, please? I looked at him, my voice icy. There's nothing left to talk about, Mitchell. I've contacted a lawyer. This is over. He looked down, defeated. I never wanted to hurt you. Well, you did, and now there are consequences, I replied, turning away to leave. Back at Erin's, my father Robert stopped by. Erin must have told him something, judging by the stern look on his face. Casey, what's going on? He asked. The kitchen felt smaller with their expressions bearing down on me. Mitchell, Natalie, and Mom, they've been in some twisted relationship behind my back. Donna, too? Robert asked, his voice a mix of shock and disappointment. I knew she could be selfish, but she did it. And now I'm going to make sure they realize just how big a mistake it was, I said firmly. Robert reached out, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. You will get through this, Casey. We will help you. Looking at Robert and Erin's determined faces, I felt a surge of strength. I wasn't alone in this. With every step, I grew more resolved to cut these toxic ties and protect Hannah from the fallout. Mitchell, Natalie, and Donna thought I was just hurt. They had no idea what was coming their way. Erin's house became our sanctuary. Hannah adjusted to the change with the resilience only a child could muster, soothed by the presence of her doting aunt and stern but loving grandfather. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the legal proceedings. My lawyer, Denise, was a tough woman who didn't mince words. We need to file for custody and get a restraining order if necessary, Denise said during our first meeting. Protecting Hannah should be our #1 priority. I nodded. I can't let her be around them, not after what they've done. Yes, every detail matters. Keep it professional, but don't hold back anything relevant. Mitchell's response to the legal notice didn't take long. He was furious, calling and texting relentlessly. When we finally met in mediation, his eyes bore holes into mine. This is ridiculous, Casey. We can work this out without dragging Hannah into it, he argued. No, Mitchell, you lost that chance the moment you betrayed me, I shot back. His betrayal felt like an abyss between us, impossible to bridge. Our argument escalated until Denise intervened. Let's keep it civil. We're here for Hannah's best interests. Mitchell fumed but didn't argue further. His lawyer tugged at his sleeve, signaling it was time to dial it down. But I knew the simmering rage and desperation hiding behind his calm facade. The scandal spread quickly through our community. Neighbors whispered behind their hands. Social media buzzed with speculation. One day, dropping Hannah off at school, I overheard a couple of parents. Did you hear about Casey's husband? Cheated on her with her best friend and her mother. Can you imagine? I stiffened but walked on, head held high. This wasn't my shame to bear. But the public fallout hit its peak when Sam, Natalie's husband, stormed into the lawyer's office one day. His face was a mask of fury. Casey, is it true? Natalie and Mitchell? He demanded. Yes, I said simply, meeting his gaze. It's all true. Sam's face twisted with rage and hurt. I knew something was off. I'm filing for divorce. She won't see a penny from me. His anger was a stark reflection of mine, and I felt a grim satisfaction knowing Natalie would face consequences beyond what I could enact. As the weeks went by, our strategy paid off. The court granted me full custody of Hannah, and Mitchell was ordered to pay alimony and child support. Publicly, the scandal wreaked havoc on his reputation. Donna found herself the target of disdain from her social circles. I never thought she'd go that low. I heard someone say at the grocery store, it was a small satisfaction, but satisfying nonetheless. Natalie, on the other hand, was dealing with Sam's impending divorce suit, a messy, ugly affair. Her once shimmering life was disintegrating. Through it all, Aaron and Robert stayed by my side, helping me rebuild. Their steadfast support was my lifeline. As the dust began to settle, Mitchell approached me one last time. His face was drawn, his eyes hollow. Casey, is there any way we can start over? I looked at him, the man who had once been my world, now alien to me. No, Mitchell, we're done. You need to live with the choices you made. Hannah and I are moving on. Turning away, I felt a surge of relief. I had faced betrayal and found my strength. The road ahead wasn't clear, but at least it was mine to walk, free from deceit and betrayal. Life had settled into a new rhythm at Aaron's house. Hannah was adjusting well, and I finally felt a sense of control returning. But I wasn't done. The time had come for my revenge. Late one evening, after putting Hannah to bed, I sat down with Aaron. It's time. I need to expose them, I said, my voice resolute. Aaron leaned in, her eyes full of determination. What's your plan? I pulled out my laptop and showed her the secret recordings I'd managed to collect over the past few weeks. Mitchell's confessions, Natalie's guilt-ridden ramblings, and Donna's shocking admissions. These need to go public. People need to see who they really are, I explained. Aaron nodded. Let's do it. They deserve everything coming their way. Together, we uploaded the videos to a hidden social media account and shared the links anonymously with several community groups and local news outlets. It didn't take long for the videos to go viral. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Comments poured in, expressing disdain and disbelief. The once respected Mitchell, Natalie, and Donna were now subjects of vicious gossip and public shaming. I received a text from Mitchell late that night. Casey, you need to stop this. It's ruining us. I ignored it. There was no room for mercy. A few days later, I ran into Donna at the grocery store. She looked haggard, a shell of the woman she once was. Casey, I can't go anywhere without people staring at me. How could you do this? I met her eyes without flinching. You did this to yourself, Mom. Actions have consequences. Natalie's life was unraveling too. Sam's divorce suit was the talk of the town. I heard through mutual friends that she'd been forced to leave her job. One evening, she called me, her voice trembling. Casey, please, I'm begging you, stop this. I've lost everything. Good, I replied coldly. Now you know how it feels. Mitchell, desperate, showed up at Aaron's doorstep. Aaron stood firm, blocking his way. You're not welcome here, Mitchell. Leave. He pleaded. Please, Casey, I was wrong. I'll do anything to fix this. I stepped forward, my face a mask of resolve. Fix it? There's no fixing this. You did this. Now live with it. With Mitchell gone and my revenge complete, I felt a strange sense of closure. Aaron and Robert's unwavering support had given me the strength to reclaim my life. It had been a long, painful journey, but I had survived and emerged stronger. Through the chaos, Hannah remained my beacon. One evening, as we sat together watching her favorite show, she turned to me and said, "Mommy, are we happy now?" I smiled, genuinely this time. "Yes, sweetie, we're happy." In the weeks that followed, Mitchell's life fell apart. He lost his job, became a pariah in the community, and was left to brood in his isolation. Donna and Natalie were similarly ostracized, struggling to rebuild their shattered reputations. As for me, I found peace in the simple joys, morning pancakes with Hannah, quiet evenings with Aaron and Robert, and the calm certainty that I had done the right thing. The web of deceit that once strangled my life was gone. Looking ahead, I saw a future filled with hope and new beginnings. Mitchell, Natalie, and Donna had tried to break me, but all they did was make me stronger. Standing in the warm sunlight, holding Hannah's hand, I knew that we had finally found our way out of the darkness, and there was no going back. Months passed, and a sense of normalcy slowly returned. Aaron's house had become a home for Hannah and me. The chaos created by Mitchell, Natalie, and Donna's betrayal was starting to feel like a distant nightmare. One sunny Saturday morning, Aaron and I were watching Hannah play in the backyard when the doorbell rang. It was Mitchell. He looked like a ghost of his former self, pale, tired, and aged beyond his years. "Can we talk, please?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Aaron stayed inside, ready to intervene if necessary. I stepped out onto the porch, folding my arms. "What do you want, Mitchell?" He struggled for words, desperation clear in his eyes. "I lost everything, Casey. My job, my friends, my life. I know I deserve it, but I need to see Hannah. Please." "She's doing fine without you. Better, in fact," I replied, not ready to soften. "Casey," he pleaded, "I know I can't fix what I did, but she's my daughter, too." "I don't want to miss her growing up," I sighed, feeling a conflict within. "You should have thought of that before you betrayed us." He nodded, a broken man. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to both of you if you'll let me." "Go home, Mitchell," I said warily. "I'll think about it." Back inside, Aaron looked at me, concern etched on her face. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, exhaling slowly. "Just dealing with the wreckage." My father, Robert, came by often, offering the kind of quiet support that spoke volumes. "You're doing great, Casey. Better than I ever expected." "Thanks, Dad," I said, appreciating his steady presence. His wisdom anchored me, reminding me of the simple truths that kept me grounded. Donna's attempts to mend our severed bond were less frequent but equally poignant. One afternoon she called. "Casey, I miss you. I'm so sorry for everything." "The damage is done, Mom," I answered with a sad finality. "It's going to take more than an apology to fix this." Over time, the sharp edges of betrayal dulled, replaced by a new focus, Hannah's future. We settled into a comfortable routine, life's small joys reminding me what mattered most. I threw myself into my work, finding new goals and achievements to pursue. One evening, as I tucked Hannah into bed, she looked up at me with bright eyes filled with trust. "Will Daddy ever come home?" I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe someday, sweetie. But remember, you're surrounded by people who love you. That's what matters." In the following months, Mitchell tried to rebuild his shattered life. The floor of rock bottom taught him humility he'd never known. Natalie and Donna, too, faced their own lonely paths, ostracized by friends and community. I received updates through the grapevine but kept my distance. Their struggles were theirs to bear, consequences of their choices. I was busy with something far more important, creating a safe, loving environment for Hannah. One day, walking hand in hand with Hannah through a park, I felt a sense of peace. "Mommy, look at the ducks," she shouted excitedly. I smiled, squeezing her tiny hand. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" For the first time in a long while, the future looked bright. I had faced the nightmare, fought my battles, and emerged stronger. The chains of betrayal had been broken, replaced by new hopes and dreams. Standing there, watching Hannah laugh and play, I knew we were going to be all right. Our story wasn't just about revenge, it was about rediscovering life, finding strength in the ruins, and building a future free from the shadows of deceit. The warm summer breeze carried the tantalizing aromas of freshly grilled meats and sizzling street food as I strolled through the bustling gourmet festival. My heart swelled with pride, knowing that my passion for promoting healthy eating habits had helped make this event a reality. Little did I know that this joyous occasion would soon take an unexpected turn, casting a dark shadow over the memories of my past. As I admired the vibrant array of local vendors showcasing their culinary creations, a familiar voice pierced through the lively chatter, sending a chill down my spine. "Well, if it isn't Lila, fancy meeting you here." I whirled around, my breath caught in my throat as I came face to face with Mark, my ex-husband, accompanied by his new wife, Elise. A sudden wave of emotions washed over me. A potent mix of anger, resentment, and an undeniable twinge of envy at the sight of their polished appearances and the air of affluence that surrounded them. "Mark, Elise," I managed to utter, mustering a forced smile. "It's been a while." "Indeed, it has," Elise chimed in, her perfectly manicured nails glistening in the sunlight. "It's so nice to see you managing to keep yourself busy with, well, whatever it is you do these days." Her thinly veiled condescension stung, but I refused to let her words diminish the sense of accomplishment I'd worked so hard to cultivate. Before I could respond, Mark intervened, his tone dripping with false concern. "Lila, you're looking well. I trust your little nutrition business is keeping you occupied?" I bristled at his dismissive remark, but years of emotional turmoil had taught me to keep my composure. "It's more than just a little business, Mark. My work has a real impact on people's lives. Something you never seem to grasp." An uncomfortable silence descended upon us, the festive ambience suddenly muted by the weight of our shared history. Mark's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and I could sense the tension brewing beneath his carefully crafted facade. "Well, we mustn't keep you any longer," Elise interjected, her saccharine smile masking a deeper disdain. "I'm sure you have clients to attend to." With a curt nod, they turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to grapple with the conflicting emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. As I stood there, surrounded by the joyous laughter and the mouth-watering scents that had once brought me such delight, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss, not for the man I had once loved, but for the naive, trusting woman I had been. As I walked away from the festival, my mind spiraled back to the fateful night that shattered my world. Mark's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway, his face etched with guilt. "There's been an emergency at the hospital," he muttered, already halfway out the door before I could respond. This wasn't the first time he had been called away unexpectedly, and I had learned to accept the demands of his profession. But something felt different that night. A nagging sense of unease that I couldn't quite shake. Hours ticked by, and Mark's absence stretched longer than usual. Concern gave way to suspicion as I paced restlessly, unable to silence the doubts gnawing at the back of my mind. Finally, exhausted and desperate for answers, I decided to venture out and uncover the truth myself. The drive to the hospital was a blur, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel with a mixture of determination and dread. But as I approached the familiar entrance, a sinking feeling consumed me. Mark's car was nowhere to be found. Panic set in, and I found myself wandering aimlessly, searching for any clue that might explain his disappearance. That's when I saw it. A sleek silver sedan parked in a secluded corner of the lot, its tinted windows offering no insight into its occupants. Summoning every ounce of courage, I crept closer, my heart pounding in my ears, and then a sound that would haunt me for years to come, laughter, followed by the unmistakable rustle of clothing and the muffled murmurs of intimacy. The world around me seemed to freeze as realization dawned, shattering the illusion of the life I thought I knew. Paralyzed by shock and disbelief, I stumbled away from the scene, my vision blurred by a torrent of tears. Weeks turned into months, and Mark's lies only compounded, each explanation more flimsy than the last. And yet, I clung to the fading hope that the man I loved still existed beneath the web of deceit. But fate had other plans. One fateful evening, as I was sorting through the mail, an innocuous envelope caught my eye. Inside, a series of incriminating photographs, proof of Mark's infidelity, captured in excruciatingly vivid detail. And there she was, the woman I would come to know as Elise, her smug grin searing itself into my memory like a brand. The confrontation that followed was explosive, a maelstrom of accusations and denials that culminated in a bitter separation. Mark, ever the smooth operator, wasted no time parading his new trophy wife before the world, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces of my life. As I stood amidst the bustling festival, the memories of that harrowing time came flooding back, each carefully constructed lie Mark had fed me, replaying in my mind like a twisted mantra. But this time, I refused to be the victim. This time, I would have my revenge. In the aftermath of my divorce, I found solace in the one thing that had always brought me joy: my work. Pouring my energy into building a thriving nutrition consulting business, I slowly began to heal the deep wounds left by Mark's betrayal. It was during this time of personal growth that I met Owen, a kind-hearted widower and elementary school teacher. Our paths crossed at a local health fair, where his genuine interest in my work and gentle demeanor immediately put me at ease. "I admire your passion for helping others," he remarked as we chatted over steaming cups of herbal tea. "It's so refreshing to encounter someone who truly cares about making a positive impact." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I found myself laughing without the weight of past trauma holding me back. Owen's warm smile and genuine concern for my well-being were like a soothing balm on the scars left by Mark's deceit. As our friendship blossomed into something more, I couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between these two men. Where Mark had been consumed by ambition and a relentless pursuit of success, Owen embodied humility and a deep appreciation for the simple joys in life. "You know, Leela," he mused one evening as we strolled hand in hand through the park, "true wealth isn't measured by material possessions or status. It's found in the connections we forge, the lives we touch, and the legacy we leave behind." His words resonated deeply within me, a testament to the profound shift in my priorities and values. No longer was I captivated by the allure of wealth and prestige. Instead, I found myself drawn to Owen's unwavering integrity and his genuine concern for the well-being of those around him. With each passing day, the specter of my past faded, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and a determination to embrace the second chance life had offered me. "You've been through so much," Owen remarked one night, his fingers gently caressing my cheek. "But your resilience and strength are an inspiration. I'm honored to be a part of your journey." As I gazed into his eyes, brimming with sincerity and understanding, I knew that this man represented everything I had been searching for: a partner who valued honesty, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of trust. In that moment, I vowed to leave the ghosts of my past behind, to embrace the future with open arms, and to never again allow myself to be defined by the mistakes of others. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was truly free. Months after my chance encounter with Mark and Elise at the food festival, I found myself attending a charity gala hosted by our city's most prominent organizations. As I adjusted the sleek, navy blue dress Owen had surprised me with, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of nervous anticipation. "You're going to be amazing tonight," Owen whispered, placing a reassuring kiss on my cheek as we made our way into the elegantly decorated ballroom. Little did I know that this evening would mark a turning point, a pivotal moment where the karmic scales would begin to shift in my favor. As the event unfolded, I mingled with colleagues and community leaders, sharing insights into the work I was so passionate about. Owen beamed with pride, never missing an opportunity to sing my praises to anyone within earshot. It was during one such conversation that I caught a glimpse of Mark and Elise entering the room, their designer outfits and air of self-importance impossible to miss. A familiar pang of resentment tugged at my heart, but before I could dwell on it, Owen swept me into his arms. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" he announced, his voice ringing out with confidence. "I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone truly special." As the room fell silent, Owen turned to me, his eyes shining with adoration. "Lila, your unwavering dedication to improving the lives of others through your work has been an inspiration to us all. Tonight, we celebrate you and the countless lives you've touched." A thunderous applause erupted as Owen presented me with a beautiful crystal plaque inscribed with words of gratitude from the community. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth and admiration of my peers, I felt a surge of empowerment unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Mark and Elise, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and barely concealed disdain. It was as if the universe had conspired to shine a spotlight on my accomplishments, forcing them to confront the glaring contrast between my life and theirs. As the evening drew to a close, I couldn't help but savor the sweet taste of vindication. Owen had orchestrated the perfect scenario, subtly but effectively showcasing the depth of my impact while highlighting the shallowness of Mark and Elise's perceived superiority. On the drive home, I found myself reflecting on the twists and turns that had led me to this point. Once a victim of betrayal and emotional turmoil, I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and surrounded by those who truly valued me for who I was. And as for Mark and Elise, their presence at the gala had served as a stark reminder of the emptiness that lurked beneath their carefully curated facade, a hollow existence built on lies and superficial trappings. For the first time, I felt a sense of pity for them, realizing that no amount of wealth or status could compensate for the absence of genuine fulfillment and meaningful connections. As Owen's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining in a tender embrace, I knew that the path ahead would be one of triumph and personal growth, leaving the shadows of my past firmly in the rearview mirror. The charity gala had barely concluded when I found myself face to face with Mark and Elise once again. As Owen excused himself to grab us some refreshments, the tension in the air was palpable. "Well, well, if it isn't the guest of honor," Elise sneered, her perfectly painted lips curling into a condescending smirk. "I must say that little display earlier was quite impressive." Mark remained silent, his eyes narrowed as he regarded me with a mix of disdain and something else, a flicker of envy, perhaps. I steeled myself, determined not to let their petty jabs pierce my newfound confidence. "Elise, always a pleasure," I replied, my tone laced with sarcasm. "I'm glad you enjoyed the evening. It's all in service of a good cause, after all." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she searched for a weakness to exploit. "Yes, well, we all have our hobbies, don't we?" she quipped. "Some choose to make a real difference, while others settle for playing nutritionist to the masses." The barb stung, but before I could respond, Owen reappeared by my side, his presence serving as a steadying force. "Mark, Elise," he greeted them warmly, his arm snaking around my waist in a protective embrace. "I hope you've been enjoying yourselves. Lila's work is truly inspiring, isn't it?" Elise opened her mouth to retort, but Owen cut her off with a disarming smile. "In fact, I've been considering getting more involved myself. Perhaps you could enlighten me on the inner workings of your business ventures, Mark." The shift in tone was subtle, but unmistakable. Owen's words carried an undercurrent of veiled accusation, as if he possessed knowledge that extended far beyond the superficial realm of Mark's supposed success. Mark visibly tensed, his eyes darting between Owen and me, searching for any sign of weakness or vulnerability. But he found none, for in that moment I felt an overwhelming sense of empowerment, bolstered by Owen's unwavering support. "Yes, Mark, do tell us about your endeavors," I echoed, my voice steady and assured. "I'm sure we'd all love to hear about the sacrifices you've made to achieve your aspirations." The air grew thick with tension, charged with unspoken truths and barely concealed barbs. Elise's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in power dynamics, while Mark's carefully constructed facade began to crack, revealing glimpses of the insecurity and guilt that festered beneath. In that moment, I knew that the tide had turned. No longer was I the one cowering in the shadows, haunted by the echoes of betrayal. Instead, I stood tall, emboldened by the knowledge that karma was slowly but surely exacting its due. As Mark and Elise beat a hasty retreat, their excuses falling flat, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction course through my veins. This was merely the beginning, a premonition of the reckoning that awaited them, a harbinger of the retribution they so richly deserved. Owen's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a silent gesture of solidarity. "You're incredible, you know that?" he murmured, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. And in that moment, surrounded by the echoes of our hard-won victory, I knew that the path ahead would be one paved with redemption and the sweet taste of long-awaited justice. Weeks after the charity gala, I found myself standing alongside Mark at a prominent community health conference. As we awaited our turn to speak on the panel, the tension between us was thicker than the humid summer air. Owen, ever the supportive partner, sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride as he watched me prepare to take the stage. Little did Mark know, Owen had a few surprises up his sleeve, surprises that would soon unravel the carefully crafted facade that Mark had spent years constructing. As I took my seat behind the sleek podium, my confidence soared, fueled by the knowledge that Owen had orchestrated a powerful alliance with one of the event's major sponsors. The stage was set for Mark's downfall, and I could hardly contain my anticipation. Mark's speech was a masterclass in self-aggrandizement, filled with grandiose claims and thinly veiled boasts about his supposed contributions to the medical field. I watched with a mixture of amusement and disgust as he basked in the fleeting admiration of the audience, oblivious to the impending storm brewing on the horizon. When my turn came, I rose to the podium with a newfound confidence, my words carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom and a steadfast commitment to truth. As I spoke of the transformative power of nutrition and the importance of community outreach, I could see Mark's expression shift, his bravado slowly giving way to a flicker of unease. But the true coup de grace came when Owen took the stage, his presence commanding an air of authority that caught even me by surprise. With a few well-chosen words, he revealed his connection to the event's major sponsor, a prestigious health initiative, and announced his intention to collaborate closely with my endeavors. The impact was immediate and palpable. Suddenly, my credibility and professional standing were elevated to new heights, casting a shadow over Mark's carefully cultivated image. And as if on cue, Elise's face contorted into a mask of barely concealed rage, her eyes burning with envy and resentment. It was in that moment of triumph that Elise made her fatal mistake. Rising from her seat, she attempted to undermine my speech with a barrage of snide remarks and thinly veiled insults. But her words fell flat, and instead of diminishing my accomplishments, she only succeeded in exposing her own deceitful nature to the entire audience. As whispers and gasps of disbelief rippled through the crowd, Elise's true colors were laid bare for all to see, a desperate, vindictive woman willing to stoop to any depths to maintain her illusion of superiority. And in that moment, the karmic scales tipped inexorably in my favor. Mark, paralyzed by the unfolding spectacle, could only watch in horror as his once powerful facade crumbled before his eyes. The audience that had once hung on his every word now regarded him with a mixture of pity and disdain, their respect eroded by the harsh light of truth. As the conference drew to a close, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers and newfound allies, each one eager to congratulate me on my triumph and distance themselves from the toxicity that had enveloped Mark and Elise. And in the midst of it all, Owen stood by my side, his arm draped around my shoulders, in a silent declaration of solidarity and unwavering support. "You did it," he murmured, his eyes shining with pride. "You exposed them for who they truly are." And in that moment, I knew that the path to redemption had been paved, the karmic scales finally balancing in my favor after years of suffering and betrayal. The aftermath of the community conference was a whirlwind of congratulations and newfound alliances, but the true reckoning was yet to come. As Owen and I made our way to the after-party, arm in arm, I could sense the palpable tension in the air. Mark and Elise were already there, huddled in a corner with a few of their remaining allies, their expressions a mixture of barely concealed rage and desperation. As our eyes met, Elise's lips curled into a snarl, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the stem of her wine glass. But before she could launch into another tirade of insults and accusations, a voice rang out from across the room, cutting through the din like a knife. "Mark, is it true?" The question came from a mild-mannered colleague of Mark's, a man whose quiet demeanor had always made him fade into the background. But tonight, his eyes burned with a newfound intensity, fueled by the revelations that had unfolded during the conference. Mark's face paled as he turned to face the man, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Is it true that you've been falsifying patient records?" the man pressed, his voice steadily rising. That you've been prioritizing your own financial gain over the well-being of those you've sworn to protect? A hush fell over the room as the weight of the accusation sank in. Suddenly, the whispers and rumors that had swirled around Mark's unethical practices crystallized into a damning reality, laid bare for all to see. Elise's perfectly composed mask began to crack, her eyes darting frantically between Mark and the growing crowd of onlookers. But it was too late. The floodgates had opened, and a torrent of long-repressed truths came surging forth. One by one, colleagues and former associates stepped forward, their voices rising in a chorus of condemnation. Stories of Mark's lies, his manipulations, and his callous disregard for the well-being of others echoed through the room, each revelation more damning than the last. And at the center of it all stood Owen, his quiet presence a beacon of integrity amidst the chaos. With a few carefully chosen words, he connected the dots between Mark's professional misdeeds and his personal betrayals, painting a vivid picture of a man consumed by greed and ambition. As the night wore on, the walls seemed to close in around Mark and Elise, their once formidable empire crumbling under the weight of their own deceit. Colleagues who had once fawned over them now turned their backs, their admiration replaced by scorn and disgust. And through it all, I stood tall, my hand clasped firmly in Owen's, a silent witness to the poetic justice unfolding before my eyes. For years, I had been the victim, cowering in the shadows of Mark's lies and Elise's cruelty. But now the tables had turned, and I basked in the sweet taste of long-awaited retribution. As the night drew to a close, and the last of Mark's supporters slunk away in defeat, I found myself surrounded by a sea of friendly faces, colleagues, community leaders, and newfound allies who had witnessed my triumph and rallied to my side. And in the midst of it all, Owen pulled me close, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You stood your ground, and the truth prevailed." In that moment I knew that the path to redemption had been forged, paved with the remnants of Mark and Elise's shattered facade. The scales of karma had finally balanced, and a new chapter of my life was just beginning. The soft glow of candlelight danced across the intimate confines of the cozy restaurant, casting warm hues over the faces of the small gathering. Owen's hand found mine beneath the tablecloth, his fingers intertwining with my own as I surveyed the smiling faces of those who had stood by me through the tumultuous journey. As glasses clinked and laughter filled the air, I couldn't help but reflect on the winding path that had led me here. A path paved with heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately redemption. "A toast," Owen announced, rising to his feet and raising his glass, "to new beginnings and the strength to overcome adversity." A chorus of cheers erupted, echoing through the dimly lit space as we celebrated not just my personal triumph, but the resilience of the human spirit itself. In the aftermath of the conference, the dominoes of Mark and Elise's downfall had continued to fall, one after another. Professional censures, legal battles, and a steadily dwindling circle of allies had left them isolated and disgraced, their once formidable reputations in tatters. But tonight wasn't about them. It was about embracing the future and the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. As the evening wore on, conversations ebbed and flowed, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the clinking of silverware against plates. And through it all, Owen remained by my side, his unwavering support a constant source of strength and inspiration. It was during a lull in the conversation that he gently cleared his throat, his eyes shining with a mixture of love and determination. "Leela," he began, his voice steady and assured, "from the moment we met, you've been an inspiration, a beacon of resilience and unwavering commitment to what truly matters in life." A hush fell over the table as he reached into his pocket, producing a small, velvet box. My breath caught in my throat as he lowered himself to one knee, the flickering candlelight dancing across his face. "You've shown me the true meaning of courage and perseverance, and I can't imagine walking this journey without you by my side. Lila, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The room seemed to fade away as I gazed into Owen's eyes, our shared history and the promise of a future together crystallizing in that single, pivotal moment. Tears of joy streaked down my cheeks as I nodded, rendered speechless by the depth of emotion swirling within me. A thunderous applause erupted, our friends and allies rising to their feet in a chorus of celebration. As Owen slipped the ring onto my finger, a symbolic gesture of our commitment, I knew that this moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by the shadows of the past, but by the radiant promise of a future built on love, trust, and the unwavering bond we shared. In that moment, I realized that the long, arduous journey had been worth it. Every heartache, every betrayal, every tear shed had led me to this point, this moment of profound joy and redemption. As I gazed around the table at the faces of those who had become my chosen family, I knew that the path ahead would be one of growth, healing, and the unbreakable bonds forged through shared experiences. And as for Mark and Elise, their names faded into the recesses of my mind, eclipsed by the overwhelming sense of gratitude and contentment that washed over me. For in the end, karma had indeed run its course, and I had emerged victorious, not through acts of vengeance or bitterness, but by embracing the power of forgiveness and letting go of the past that had once held me captive. As Owen's lips met mine in a tender kiss, I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of a future built on love, trust, and the unbreakable bonds that had sustained me through the darkest of times. And in that moment, I was truly blissfully free. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet of my kitchen. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered, expecting to hear Rachel's cheerful voice. Instead, my daughter's sobs crackled through the speaker. "Mom, I can't stand living here anymore," Rachel wailed. "They treat me like a stranger and won't let me visit Dad." My heart clenched. "Sweetheart, slow down. What's going on?" "Aunt Linda and Uncle Gary," she hiccuped. "They're awful. I feel like a prisoner." I gripped the counter, steadying myself. "What do you mean they won't let you visit your father?" "They say he's a bad influence," Rachel sniffled, "that I shouldn't waste my time with him. Mom, I want to come home." "Of course, honey," I said, my mind racing. "We'll figure this out, I promise." As soon as we hung up, I dialed Robert's number. My husband answered on the third ring, his voice gruff. "Evelyn? What's wrong?" "It's Rachel," I said. "She just called hysterical. Did you know Linda and Gary have been keeping her from seeing you?" Robert sighed heavily. "Come on, Ev, you know how dramatic teenagers can be." "This isn't drama, Robert," I snapped. "Your sister is manipulating our daughter, again." "Now, hold on," he started, but I cut him off. "No, you hold on. Our daughter is hurting and you're defending Linda. When are you going to put our family first?" The line went quiet for a moment. "Let me talk to Linda," Robert finally said. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'm sure there has been, but not the kind you're thinking." After hanging up, I paced the kitchen, my mind whirling. Linda had always been a thorn in my side, but this was a new low. I thought back to the day Rachel announced she was moving in with her aunt and uncle. Linda had been so sickeningly sweet, promising to guide Rachel through her college years. The doorbell startled me from my thoughts. I opened the front door to find my best friend, Patricia, holding a bottle of wine. "I could hear you fuming from down the street," she said with a wry smile. "Thought you might need this." I ushered her inside, grateful for the company. As we settled on the couch, I filled Patricia in on Rachel's call and Robert's dismissive response. Patricia's eyes widened. "That witch," she muttered. "And Robert's still making excuses for her?" I nodded, taking a long sip of wine. "I don't know what to do, Pat. I can't just sit here while Linda poisons Rachel against us." "Then don't," Patricia said firmly. "Fight back. You've let Linda walk all over you for years. It's time to show her you're not going to take it anymore." I stared at my friend, a mix of fear and determination bubbling up inside me. "You're right," I said slowly. "But how?" Patricia leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "We start digging. Linda's bound to have skeletons in her closet. Find them and use them." As we brainstormed, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Aunt Linda took my phone, using Gary's iPad. Please help." My hands shook as I showed Patricia the message. "That's it," I said, standing up. "I'm going over there right now." Patricia grabbed my arm. "Wait, Evelyn, we need a plan. Charging in there will only make things worse." I sank back onto the couch, deflated. "You're right, but I can't just abandon Rachel." "We won't," Patricia assured me. "But we need to be smart about this. Linda's played this game for years. It's time to beat her at it." As we plotted our next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, painful battle. But for Rachel's sake, I was ready to fight. Linda had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I marched into Robert's study, determined to make him see reason. He looked up from his laptop, his brow furrowing at my expression. "We need to talk about Rachel," I said, my voice tight with frustration. Robert sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Evelyn, I told you it's just teenage drama. Linda wouldn't." "Stop defending her!" I snapped. "Our daughter is miserable, and you're brushing it off like it's nothing." "You're overreacting," Robert said, his tone patronizing. "Rachel's always been sensitive. She'll adjust." I felt my temper flare. "Overreacting? Robert, they're controlling her every move. How can you not see what's happening?" Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Rachel, using Gary's iPad again. My heart raced as I read her message. "Uncle Gary told me you and Dad are planning to divorce. Is it true?" I showed Robert the text, watching the color drain from his face. "Still think I'm overreacting?" I asked coldly. Robert's jaw clenched. "I'll talk to Gary. This is getting out of hand." "Getting out of hand?" I laughed bitterly. "It's been out of hand since the day Rachel moved in with them. Why can't you stand up to your sister for once?" "You don't understand," Robert muttered, avoiding my gaze. "It's complicated." "Then explain it to me," I demanded. "What hold does Linda have over you?" Robert's silence spoke volumes. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized there was more to this story than I knew. "Robert," I said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" He opened his mouth to respond when Rachel burst through the front door, tears streaming down her face. We rushed to meet her in the hallway. "Rachel, honey, what happened?" I asked, pulling her into a hug. Between sobs, she choked out, I heard Aunt Linda on the phone. She was talking about Dad, about some woman named Melissa." I felt Robert stiffen beside me. "What about Melissa?" he asked, his voice strained. Rachel looked up at him, her eyes wide. She said you had an affair with her, that you have another kid." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stumbled back, staring at Robert in disbelief. "Is this true?" Robert's face crumpled. "Evelyn, I can explain." I cut him off, my voice ice cold. "Just don't." Rachel looked between us, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said anything." I pulled her close, stroking her hair. "No, sweetheart, you did the right thing. This isn't your fault." Robert reached out, but I flinched away. "Both of you, just give me a minute," I said, retreating to the kitchen. My hands shook as I gripped the counter, trying to process this bombshell. An affair, another child. How long had Linda known? How long had she been using this to manipulate Robert? I heard hushed voices from the hallway, then footsteps approaching. Robert appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of guilt and fear. "Evelyn," he began, "I know I've made mistakes, but..." "Mistakes?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You call this a mistake? How long, Robert? How long have you been lying to me?" He flinched at my words. "It was years ago, before Rachel was born. I never meant for any of this to happen." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "And Linda's known all this time, hasn't she? That's why you always take her side. She's been blackmailing you." Robert's silence was all the confirmation I needed. I felt a surge of determination, tinged with rage. "Well," I said, straightening up, "it ends now. I won't let Linda use this to control our family anymore. And you," I pointed at Robert, "you have a lot of explaining to do. To me and to your daughter." As I brushed past him to comfort Rachel, I realized this was just the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. The annual Parker family barbecue was always a tense affair, but this year, the air crackled with unspoken accusations and barely concealed hostility. I stood at the grill, flipping burgers with more force than necessary, my eyes constantly darting to Linda's smug face across the yard. Rachel huddled near me, her eyes downcast. "Mom, I don't want to be here," she whispered. "I know, sweetie," I murmured. "We'll leave soon, I promise." Robert approached, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Everything okay over here?" Before I could answer, Linda sauntered over, Gary trailing behind her like an obedient puppy. "Oh, Robert," she cooed. "I was just telling everyone how proud we are of Rachel. She's become such a wonderful little housekeeper at our place." I felt Rachel stiffen beside me. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Linda's smile was saccharine. "Well, she's just so good at keeping things tidy. Dishes, laundry, you name it. We hardly have to lift a finger anymore. That's not Rachel's job, I snapped. She's there to focus on her studies, not be your maid. Now, Evelyn, Linda skied, don't be so sensitive. Rachel needs to learn responsibility. Responsibility? I echoed, my temper flaring. Is that what you call exploiting my daughter? Robert stepped between us. Ladies, please, this isn't the time or place. I rounded on him. And when is the time, Robert? When are you going to stand up for your daughter? The gathering had gone quiet, all eyes on our little group. Linda's smile never wavered. Your daughter is just like you, Evelyn, always overreacting. Something inside me snapped. Overreacting? You've been manipulating and controlling Rachel since the day she moved in. You've restricted her allowance, cut her off from her friends, and now I find out you've been using her as free labor? Linda's eyes narrowed. You ungrateful little... That's enough, Robert's voice boomed across the yard. For a moment, I thought he was finally taking our side, but then he turned to me, his expression cold. Evelyn, you're making a scene. Maybe you should take Rachel home. I stared at him in disbelief. You're still defending her? After everything? Rachel tugged at my sleeve. Mom, please, can we just go? I nodded, my heart breaking for my daughter. As we turned to leave, Linda called out, Oh, Rachel, dear, don't forget you promised to help me with the church fundraiser next weekend. Rachel froze. I can't, she stammered. I have plans with Mom. Linda's eyes glittered. But you promised, dear, you wouldn't want to disappoint the whole congregation, would you? I saw the conflict on Rachel's face and made a split-second decision. Actually, Linda, I said, my voice steady, Rachel won't be available. She's moving back home, today. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda's face contorted with rage. You can't do that, she hissed. Watch me, I retorted, putting an arm around Rachel's shoulders. As we walked away, I heard Linda's shrill voice behind us. Robert, are you going to let her do this? After everything we've done for you? I didn't wait to hear Robert's response. In the car, Rachel burst into tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have told you sooner about everything. I squeezed her hand. This isn't your fault, sweetheart. We're going to fix this, I promise. As we drove home, my mind raced. I knew this was far from over. Linda wouldn't let Rachel go without a fight, and I had a sinking feeling that Robert would once again side with his sister. But looking at Rachel's tear-stained face, I felt a fierce determination well up inside me. No matter what it took, I would protect my daughter and expose Linda's manipulations. The gloves were off, and I was ready for battle. The moment Robert walked through the door that evening, I was ready for him. Rachel had gone to bed early, exhausted from the day's events, leaving us alone to confront the elephant in the room. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. Robert sighed, loosening his tie. Evelyn, if this is about the barbecue... This is about everything, I cut him off. Your sister, your daughter, your complete inability to stand up for your family. His face hardened. That's not fair. You know how complicated things are with Linda. Complicated? I laughed bitterly. What I know is that our daughter was miserable living with her, and you did nothing. Linda was trying to help, Robert argued weakly. I felt my temper flare. Help? By treating Rachel like a servant? By cutting her off from her friends and family? You're exaggerating, he muttered, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Am I? I challenged. Then explain to me why you stood there and let Linda humiliate me in front of everyone, why you're always taking her side over ours. Robert's shoulders slumped. It's not that simple, Evelyn. Linda, she knows things. About me, about our family, things that could destroy us if they came out. I felt a chill run down my spine. What things, Robert? What could possibly justify letting your sister treat your daughter this way? He opened his mouth to respond when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. You think you've won? Think again. Rachel comes back, or everyone learns Robert's dirty little secret. I showed Robert the message, watching the color drain from his face. What secret, Robert? I demanded. What does she have on you? He collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I made a mistake years ago. Before Rachel was born, there was another woman, and there's a child. Linda's the only one who knows. The room seemed to spin. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. You have another child? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Robert nodded miserably. I've been paying child support in secret all these years. Linda found out, and she's been using it to control me ever since. Rage and betrayal warred within me. How could you keep this from me? From Rachel? I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid of losing you, of hurting Rachel. Linda swore she'd keep it secret if I did what she wanted. And what she wanted was to control our lives, I said bitterly, to drive a wedge between us and Rachel. Robert reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Evelyn, please. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I love you and Rachel more than anything. We can fix this. I stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. A man torn between loyalty to his sister and love for his family, paralyzed by fear and guilt. You're right, I said slowly. We can fix this, but not by giving in to Linda's blackmail. Robert's eyes widened. What are you saying? I straightened up, a plan forming in my mind. I'm saying it's time we take control of our own story. We tell Rachel the truth, all of it, and then we confront Linda together. But the scandal, the family. The family is already in shambles, I interrupted. At least this way we're being honest. It's the only way to break Linda's hold over us. Robert looked terrified, but I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. You'd stand by me, even after learning this? I took a deep breath. I'm furious with you, Robert, but I love our family too much to let Linda destroy it. We'll deal with your betrayal, but first we need to unite against the real enemy. As I spoke the words, I felt a surge of determination. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt like we had a fighting chance. Okay, Robert said quietly. Let's do it. Let's tell Rachel everything. I nodded, steeling myself for the conversation that would change our family forever. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The morning after our confrontation, Robert and I sat Rachel down to tell her everything. Her face crumpled as Robert confessed to his affair and the existence of her half-sibling. I held her hand tightly, my heart breaking as I watched her world shift beneath her feet. Why now? Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why tell me this after all these years? I took a deep breath. Because Aunt Linda has been using this information to control us, sweetheart, and we're not going to let her do that anymore. Rachel's eyes flashed with anger. So that's why you always let her walk all over us, Dad? Because you were afraid of your own mistakes? Robert nodded, shame etched across his face. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I thought I was protecting our family, but I was just making things worse. As we talked through the implications, my phone buzzed incessantly. I ignored it, focusing on comforting Rachel. But when I finally checked, my blood ran cold. Linda had been busy. There were messages from family members, friends, even our neighbors, all of them expressing shock, disappointment, and in some cases outright disgust. Linda had spread the news of Robert's affair far and wide, twisting the narrative to paint me as the villain who had torn the family apart by overreacting to an ancient indiscretion. She's turned everyone against us, I said, my voice shaking with fury and disbelief. Rachel grabbed my phone, scrolling through the messages with wide eyes. How could she do this? Doesn't she care about how this affects me? Linda only cares about control, Robert said bitterly. She's always been that way, even when we were kids. I stood up, pacing the room as my mind raced. We need to fight back. We can't let her narrative be the only one out there. Just then, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Patricia, her face etched with concern. Evelyn, I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? I ushered her in, grateful for a friendly face. As we filled Patricia in on the full story, including Robert's confession, her expression hardened. This ends now, Patricia declared. Linda's gone too far. We need to expose her for the manipulative snake she is. Rachel, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. I want to help. I'm tired of being a pawn in Aunt Linda's games. I looked at my daughter, seeing a determination in her eyes that mirrored my own. Are you sure, sweetheart? This could get ugly. She nodded firmly. I'm sure, Mom, it's time we stood up for ourselves. As we began to strategize, another text came through. This time it was from Gary, Linda's husband. Evelyn, we need to talk. Linda's gone too far. I have information that could help you. I showed the message to the others, a mix of hope and suspicion coursing through me. Could this be the break we needed, or another of Linda's traps? It could be a setup, Robert warned. Or it could be our chance to turn the tables, Patricia countered. I looked at each of their faces, Robert's guilt-ridden but determined, Rachel's fierce and ready for battle, Patricia's supportive and strategic. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. "I'm meeting Gary," I announced. "But I'm not going alone. We're in this together now." As we prepared to face whatever Gary had in store, I felt a shift in the air. The fear and shame that had clouded our family for so long was lifting, replaced by a united front against Linda's tyranny. "Whatever happens," I said, looking at my family and friend, "we face it as one. Linda's reign of manipulation ends today." With those words, we stepped out into the uncertain future, ready to reclaim our lives and our family's honor. The battle ahead would be tough, but for the first time in years I felt hope blooming in my chest. We had the truth on our side, and together, we were stronger than any lie Linda could spin. The cafe where we agreed to meet Gary was bustling with the lunch crowd, but I barely noticed the noise. My heart pounded as I sat with Patricia, Robert, and Rachel, waiting for Linda's husband to arrive. "Are you sure about this?" Robert asked for the 100th time. I nodded, my jaw set. "We need to know what Gary has to say. It might be our only chance to turn the tables on Linda." Rachel squeezed my hand. "We're with you, Mom, no matter what." Just then Gary walked in, looking nervous and disheveled. He slid into the booth, his eyes darting around as if expecting Linda to appear at any moment. "Thank you for meeting us," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said you had information?" Gary nodded, pulling out a USB drive. "Linda's gone too far this time. I can't be part of it anymore. This drive contains financial records, emails, everything that shows how Linda's been manipulating the family for years." My hands shook as I took the drive. "Why are you doing this, Gary? Why now?" He looked down, shame etched across his face. "I should have done it years ago. But Linda, she has a way of making you feel like you have no choice. But when she started messing with Rachel's future, I knew I had to do something." "What do you mean, messing with my future?" Rachel asked, her voice sharp. Gary sighed heavily. "Linda's been siphoning money from your grandfather's estate, money that was meant for your education, Rachel. She's been using it to fund her own lifestyle and to keep people in line." The shock around the table was palpable. Patricia was the first to recover. "We need to go through those files immediately. If what Gary's saying is true, we have more than enough to expose Linda's manipulations." As we prepared to leave, Gary grabbed my arm. "Be careful, Evelyn. Linda's desperate. She knows she's losing control, and that makes her dangerous." I nodded, a chill running down my spine. "Thank you, Gary, for everything." Back at home, we huddled around my laptop as Patricia, tech-savvy as ever, combed through the files on the drive. With each document she opened, the depth of Linda's deceit became clearer. "Look at this," Patricia said, pointing to an email chain. "Linda's been blackmailing half the family. She's got dirt on everyone, and she's been using it to keep them in line." Rachel gasped as she read over Patricia's shoulder. "She even tried to sabotage my college applications. How could she do this?" I felt a rage building inside me, hot and fierce, because she's a control freak who can't stand the idea of anyone challenging her power. As we delved deeper into Linda's web of lies, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing. Meet me at the old boathouse in an hour, or everything you care about goes up in flames." I showed the others, watching their faces pale. "It has to be Linda," Robert said. "She must have found out about Gary." "You can't go," Rachel pleaded. "It's too dangerous." But I knew I had no choice. This was our chance to end Linda's reign of terror once and for all. "I have to," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "But I'm not going alone. We face this together, remember?" As we piled into the car, heading towards the confrontation that would change everything, I felt a mix of fear and determination. Linda had pushed us to the brink, but we were pushing back. Whatever happened at that boathouse, I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same again. The old boathouse loomed before us, dark and foreboding against the setting sun. As we approached, I gripped the USB drive in my pocket, our secret weapon against Linda's years of manipulation. This was it, the moment of truth. With a deep breath, I pushed open the creaking door, ready to face whatever Linda had in store for us. As we entered the dimly lit boathouse, my heart pounded in my chest. Linda stood in the center, her face a mask of fury and desperation. Gary hovered behind her, looking torn and afraid. Well, Linda sneered. "The whole gang's here. How touching." I stepped forward, gripping the USB drive in my pocket. "It's over, Linda. We know everything. She laughed, a brittle sound that sent chills down my spine. You think you know everything? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Robert moved to stand beside me. Linda, please, this has gone on long enough. Let's talk about this like family. Family, Linda spat. You gave up the right to call me family when you chose her over me. She pointed at me, her eyes blazing with hatred. Rachel stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. Aunt Linda, why? Why did you try to sabotage my future? For a moment, Linda's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of shame, but it was quickly replaced by cold anger. Because you're just like your mother, always taking what should have been mine. What are you talking about? I demanded. Linda's laugh was bitter. Oh, poor naive Evelyn. Did you really think Robert chose you? He was supposed to marry my best friend. I had it all planned out, but then you came along and ruined everything. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I turned to Robert, searching his face for the truth. He looked stricken. Linda, that was years ago. I fell in love with Evelyn. It had nothing to do with your plans. Liar! Linda shrieked. She pulled out a gun, waving it wildly. You've all ruined everything, but I'm not going down alone. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Rachel's terrified face, Robert's protective stance, Patricia's hand reaching for her phone, and in that moment I knew what I had to do. Linda, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have proof of everything you've done, the blackmail, the stolen money, all of it. I pulled out the USB drive. If anything happens to us, this information goes public. You'll lose everything. Linda's hand wavered, the gun shaking in her grip. You're bluffing. Am I? I took a step closer, my heart racing. You've spent years manipulating this family, Linda, but it ends now. We're not your puppets anymore. Gary suddenly moved, grabbing Linda's arm. She's right, Linda. It's over. Please, don't make this worse. For a tense moment, I thought Linda might pull the trigger anyway, but then, like a deflating balloon, all the fight seemed to leave her. The gun clattered to the floor, and she collapsed into sobs. As Gary comforted his wife, I turned to my family. Rachel threw herself into my arms, crying with relief. Robert embraced us both, whispering apologies and words of love. Patricia, ever practical, was already on the phone with the police. It's done, she mouthed to me over Rachel's shoulder. As we waited for the authorities to arrive, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. We had faced our demons and come out the other side. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trusts to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt hope blossoming in my chest. Linda's reign of terror was over. Our family had been tested, pushed to the brink, but we had survived. As I held my daughter and husband close, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The sound of sirens in the distance signaled the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As the blue lights flashed through the boathouse windows, I took a deep breath, ready to step into our new future. Scarred, but stronger for having weathered the storm. The weeks following the confrontation at the boathouse were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, family therapy sessions, and long, difficult conversations. Linda and Gary faced the consequences of their actions, both legally and within the family. As I watched them leave the courthouse after their sentencing, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The Linda I once knew was gone, consumed by her own bitterness and jealousy. Our family gathered at our home for the first time since everything had come to light. The tension in the air was palpable as aunts, uncles, and cousins filed in, their faces a mix of confusion, hurt, and hope. I stood in the center of the living room, my heart pounding. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice shaky but determined. We've been through a lot as a family, and it's time we face the truth together. Over the next hour, with Robert and Rachel by my side, we laid bare the years of manipulation, the stolen money, and the web of lies Linda had spun. There were gasps of shock, tears of betrayal, and moments of stunned silence. We're not here to point fingers, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. We're here to heal, to rebuild the trust that was broken. As the truth sank in, I saw a change come over our family. The walls of suspicion and resentment began to crumble, replaced by a tentative understanding. Aunt Margaret, Linda's staunchest supporter, approached me with tears in her eyes. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Can you ever forgive us? I hugged her tightly, my own tears falling. There's nothing to forgive. We were all victims of Linda's manipulations. What matters now is that we move forward together. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Stories were shared, old wounds acknowledged, and the first tentative steps toward reconciliation were taken. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension and awkward silences, but it was a start. Later that night, as the last of the family left, Robert, Rachel, and I sat together on the porch swing. The weight of the past weeks, months, and years seemed to lift slightly as we gazed at the stars. "Mom," Rachel said softly, "I'm proud of us, for standing up to Aunt Linda, for telling the truth." I squeezed her hand. "Me too, sweetheart. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." Robert cleared his throat. "Evelyn, Rachel, I know I have a lot to make up for. My blindness to Linda's manipulations, my failure to protect our family. I'm so sorry. I promise to do better, to be the husband and father you both deserve." I looked at him, seeing the genuine remorse and love in his eyes. "It won't be easy," I said honestly. "We have a lot of trust to rebuild, but we'll do it together, day by day." Rachel leaned her head on my shoulder. "We've been through so much," she murmured. "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" I wrapped my arms around my daughter, pulling Robert closer too. "We will," I said, feeling a surge of hope in my chest. "We've been through the fire, and we've come out stronger. Together, we can overcome anything." As we sat there, our little family unit holding tight to each other, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trusts to mend, and a family to rebuild. But for the first time in a long time, I was excited for the future. Linda's shadow no longer loomed over us. We were free to write our own story, to build the kind of loving, supportive family we all deserved. And as I looked at Robert and Rachel, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them united. The night air was cool, filled with the promise of new beginnings. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beautiful new start. I took a deep breath, smoothing my hands over my navy blue skirt suit as I stepped into the bustling state building lobby. Today was the big day, my interview for the senior correspondent position at the governor's office. This opportunity could be a game changer for my career. As a single mom, balancing work and raising my 8-year-old daughter Haley was a constant juggling act, but I was determined to make it work. The assistant at the front desk greeted me with a polite smile. "Miss Carter? The governor's team is ready for you upstairs," I nodded, mustering my most confident expression. "Thank you, I'm ready." As I made my way to the elevators, my phone vibrated in my purse, probably Haley checking in from school. I pulled it out to check the caller ID, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Haley's number, but much too early for her to be out already. "Mom, please come home. I heard everything." Haley's small voice trembled through the speaker, laced with fear. "What do you mean, sweetie? What happened?" "It's Keith. He hurt me. I heard him talking about something bad." The world around me seemed to freeze as the weight of her words sank in. Keith, my charismatic boyfriend of 6 months, had always been so warm and caring towards Haley, but the terror in her voice was unmistakable. "Haley, I'm on my way right now," I said, my voice shaking. "Stay hidden and don't let Keith see you, okay?" Without a second thought, I bolted out of the building, the governor's interview forgotten. My mind raced as I jumped into my car, scenarios of what could have happened flashing through my mind. How could I have been so blind? Keith had seemed like the perfect guy, kind, successful, even getting along well with my ex-husband Peter for Haley's sake. But now, my little girl's words echoed in my ears, a sickening pit forming in my stomach. I had to get to her, and fast. I burst through the front door of our modest suburban home, my heart pounding. "Haley? Haley, where are you?" A small figure emerged from the hallway closet, tears streaming down her face. Haley ran into my arms, trembling. "Mommy, I was so scared." I held her tight, stroking her hair. "It's okay, baby. I'm here now. What happened?" Haley sniffled, her little hands clutching my blouse. "Keith came home early from work. Spat. He was yelling on the phone about some money problems. Then he started throwing things around the living room." A chill ran down my spine. In all our months together, I had never seen that side of Keith. "I tried to stay quiet in my room," Haley continued. "But then he came in and grabbed my arm really hard." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing angry red marks. White-hot fury coursed through me at the sight of those marks on my baby's delicate skin. How could he lay a hand on her? "Haley, I'm so sorry," I whispered fiercely, holding her close. "This will never happen again, I promise." The front door opened and Keith walked in, his expression changing from confusion to feigned concern when he saw us huddled together. "Jenna? What's going on?" I met his gaze with steel in my eyes. "How dare you put your hands on my daughter?" Keith's face contorted in mock bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" Haley must be making things up again for attention. He knelt down, his voice taking on that sickly, sweet tone he used to manipulate. "Isn't that right, Princess? You know I'd never hurt you." Haley shrank back against me, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, I knew her terror was real, and the man I thought I knew was a monster. "Get out," I snarled at Keith. "Get out of my house and don't ever come near us again." His expression darkened, the mask slipping. "You'll regret this, Jenna. I can make your life hell." Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and Keith's 16-year-old son Ethan walked in, his headphones on and oblivious to the confrontation. "What's going on?" he asked flatly, taking in the scene. Keith straightened, his charming smile returning like a light switch. "Nothing, son, just a little misunderstanding. Why don't you go on up to your room?" Ethan shrugged and disappeared down the hallway. I watched him go, a sinking feeling in my gut. If Keith could put on such a convincing act for his own child, what else was he capable of hiding? "This isn't over," Keith hissed, grabbing his coat. "You're going to be sorry you crossed me." With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. I held Haley close, my mind whirling. What had I gotten us into? And how could I protect my little girl from the storm I sensed was coming? After Keith's explosive confrontation, I knew I needed backup to protect Haley and myself. I texted my ex-husband Peter, knowing he would drop everything for our daughter's safety. Within the hour, he was at my doorstep, his face etched with concern. "Jenna? What's going on? Are you two okay?" I quickly recounted the incident with Keith as Haley clung to my side, her eyes still red from crying. Peter's expression darkened with barely contained fury. "That son of a bitch laid his hands on my little girl?" His fists clenched. "I'll kill him." "Pete, please." I put a hand on his arm, trying to calm him. As much as I understood his anger, violence wouldn't solve anything. We need to handle this carefully for Haley's sake. He took a deep breath, nodding reluctantly. Peter had always been protective of us, even after our divorce 2 years ago. I was grateful he was still in our lives. The next morning, I headed into work with Haley by my side, determined to investigate Keith's background more thoroughly. I pulled my tech-savvy colleague Tony aside. "Tony, I need your help digging into someone's digital footprint," I said in a low voice. "It's sensitive." Tony's eyes widened behind his thick glasses, but he simply nodded. "Say no more. Bring me what you've got, and I'll get to work." Back at my desk, I pulled up every scrap of information I had on Keith. Emails, phone records, social media profiles, anything that could provide a window into the truth behind his carefully crafted persona. As I compiled the files, movement at my periphery caught my eye. I glanced up to see Haley standing beside my desk, clutching her well-worn stuffed bunny. "Mommy, when is Keith coming back?" she asked in a small voice. My heart clenched at her innocent question. I got up and knelt in front of her, taking her little hands in mine. "Baby Keith, he's not a good man. You were right to be scared of him." I struggled to find the right words, my protective instincts raging. "He won't be coming back, ever. I won't let him hurt you again." Haley's lower lip trembled, but she nodded bravely. In that moment, I silently vowed to do whatever it took to keep this little girl safe from harm. Later that evening, Tony came to my apartment with a grim expression. "Jenna, you were right to be suspicious of this Keith guy." He pulled out a stack of printed documents, phone records, bank statements, even court filings from other states. I did some deep digging, and it's not pretty. Tony laid out a trail of evidence, a history of debt and unpaid loans, allegations of fraud and intimidation from ex-business partners. It painted a picture of a manipulative, vindictive man constantly chasing money through shady schemes. "There's more," Tony continued grimly. "I found 2 ex-wives who filed restraining orders claiming emotional and financial abuse. One of them, she dropped off the grid about 5 years ago." A chill shot down my spine. Had Keith's twisted games gone even further than we realized? I thought of Haley's terrified face, and my blood boiled. "We need to take this to the police," I stated, my voice hardening with resolve. "And we need an ironclad case to put this bastard away for good." Tony and I exchanged a determined look. For my little girl's sake, I would burn Keith's life to the ground and salt the earth. He had inexcusably threatened the most precious thing in my world, and he was going to pay. Over the next few days, I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Haley's sake while Tony and I continued digging into Keith's past. The more we uncovered, the sicker I felt. Unpaid debts, allegations of fraud, and a string of scorned exes in his wake. Just how deep did this man's depravity run? One evening, there was a heavy knock at the door. I tensed, pulling Haley closer to me on the couch before getting up to answer it. To my surprise, it was Keith standing on the doorstep, an unsettling smile plastered on his face. "Hello, Jenna. Aren't you going to invite me in?" His voice was sickly sweet, but I could see the cold threat simmering in his eyes. "You're not welcome here," I stated firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want you to stay away from me and my daughter." Keith's expression hardened. "That's no way to speak to your boyfriend, Jenna, after all we've been through together?" He took a step forward, and I instinctively moved to block him from entering. "We're through, Keith. I know what kind of man you really are." I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. The lies, the manipulation, threatening a child, it's sick. A muscle twitched in his jaw, but that eerie smile didn't waver. "You don't know what you're talking about, babe. Haley's just a troubled little girl looking for attention. Maybe I was a little rough with her, but she had it coming, disobeying me like that." White-hot fury lanced through me at his casual dismissal of abusing my daughter. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out physically. "Get off my property before I call the police, you psychopath." Keith's gaze flicked over my shoulder, catching sight of Haley peeking around the corner. His smile widened, sending a chill down my spine. "You'll regret this, Jenna. You have no idea what I'm capable of." With that ominous warning, he turned and strode back to his car, leaving me shaken. I quickly shut and locked the door, pulling Haley into a fierce hug. "It's okay, baby. He's not going to hurt you again, I promise." My words sounded hollow even to my own ears. If Keith was willing to threaten a child, what other depraved acts was he capable of to regain control? The next morning, I arrived at work to find Tony waiting anxiously at my desk. "Jenna, you'd better see this." He pulled up a series of images, screenshots of disturbing internet searches from Keith's laptop. Things no sane person should ever be looking for, much less the man dating a single mother. My stomach turned. "There's more," Tony said grimly. "I accessed the cloud backup for your home computer and, well, see for yourself." With a few keystrokes, he pulled up a video feed from inside my living room, a hidden camera I never knew existed. I felt violated all over again, watching mundane family moments playing out, all secretly recorded by that monster. "We have to go to the police now," I stated, feeling numb. "With this evidence, they can put him away for a long time." Tony nodded in solemn agreement, but something nagged at the back of my mind. If Keith was this unhinged and desperate, what other surprises might he have in store for the people trying to take him down? I made a call to Peter, knowing we'd need all the backup we could get. There was no going back now. For Haley's safety, I had to dismantle Keith's life, piece by sickening piece. With the damning evidence Tony uncovered, we knew we had to act fast before Keith could make his next move. Peter agreed to take Haley somewhere safe while Tony and I solidified our case against that monster. "Are you sure about this, Jenna?" Peter asked, concern etched on his face as he held our daughter's hand. "This guy seems capable of anything. I don't want you putting yourself in danger." "I have to do this, Pete," I stated firmly, "for Haley's sake. Keith needs to go away for a long, long time where he can't hurt anyone else." Peter nodded reluctantly. "Just be careful, and call me the second you need backup, you hear?" After they left, Tony and I got to work compiling every shred of proof we had. Bank records, court filings, the recordings from the hidden camera. It was a dizzying array of manipulation and deceit. "Wait, there's more," Tony said, his eyes widening at his computer screen. "I think I found something big." He turned the monitor to show me a series of money transfers to an offshore account I'd never seen before. And not just any money. These amounts were huge, in the millions. "What the hell is this?" I breathed. "Where is Keith getting this kind of cash?" Tony shook his head grimly. "I don't know, but it can't be legal." "And look at this." He scrolled through more documents, fake IDs, fraudulent passports, all under different aliases linked to those shady transactions. A sickening realization began to dawn on me. You think he's been running some kind of long con, scamming and manipulating innocent people out of their life savings? The pieces were starting to fall into place. Keith's constantly shifting business ventures, the trail of embittered exes, his quick attachment to me and Haley despite his shady past. He'd simply been looking for his next big score, and I'd let him get dangerously close to my family. "We need to take this to the authorities right away," I stated, feeling numb, "before he gets tipped off and tries to run." Tony nodded grimly. "I'll make some calls. We're going to bury this bastard." I forced myself to stay focused over the next few hours as we marshaled our evidence and contacted the police, but my mind kept drifting to Keith's earlier threat, his cold eyes boring into me. What else was he capable of to protect his con? A sudden knock at the apartment door made me jump. I tensed, reaching slowly for the baseball bat I now kept within reach at all times. "Who is it?" "It's me, Ethan. Keith's son." The teenage boy's muffled voice came through the door. I need to talk to you about my dad." My blood ran cold. Had Keith sent his own child here to threaten me, or worse? I gripped the bat tighter as I cracked open the door a few inches. Ethan looked past me into the apartment, his expression unreadable. "I know what my dad's really been up to. The lies, the money. I want to help you take him down." I searched his face for any hint of deception, but his steely gaze seemed sincere, if haunted. Slowly, I opened the door the rest of the way. "Tell me everything," I said grimly. If Ethan was truly on our side, he could be the key to finally destroying Keith's web of schemes once and for all. For Haley's sake, and every other innocent life that monster had shattered, I would make sure Keith paid the ultimate price. No mercy, no half measures. It was time to end this. With Ethan's help, the pieces finally fell into place. The kid may have been aloof, but he wasn't blind to his father's twisted games. Turns out Ethan had been collecting evidence against Keith for years, secret recordings, financial documents, you name it. I always knew there was something off about him, Ethan explained, running a hand through his shaggy hair. The constant moving, the shady business deals, the way he treated women like they were disposable. I just didn't know how far it really went until recently. Tony and I exchanged a grim look as we pored over Ethan's trove of damning evidence. It was a dizzying paper trail of fraud, emotional abuse, and ruined lives in Keith's wake. "We have to take this public," I stated, feeling that familiar fire burning in my chest. "Expose every last one of his sins to the world so he can never hurt anyone again." "Are you sure that's wise?" Ethan asked hesitantly. "My dad, he's capable of anything when he's backed into a corner. If he gets tipped off, he could run, or worse." I thought of Haley's terrified face that day, the marks on her little arm from Keith's vicious grip. No, I was done playing his twisted game by his rules. "Your father's reign of terror ends now," I said, my voice hardening. "We're going to take him down in a big way, live for the whole world to see. No more hiding in the shadows." With grim determination, we got to work. First order of business, find out where Keith's next big public appearance would be. The slime ball never missed a chance to preen for the cameras. Sure enough, Tony discovered Keith was headlining some big corporate event in a few days' time, rubbing elbows with local bigwigs and politicians. Perfect. Next, we looped in some other key players, Peter to help keep Haley safe and secure, and Linda, one of Keith's ex-wives who had barely escaped his clutches with her life years ago. She was more than eager to help bring him down once and for all. "I'll be there with everything I have on that monster," she stated grimly over the phone. It's long past time he faced real consequences. Finally, the big day arrived. I could feel the adrenaline thrumming through my veins as we got into position at the convention center where Keith's event was happening. Peter and Haley were safely tucked away, but I knew my little girl was watching over the live stream we had set up. Keith took the stage, all false bravado and that trademark smarmy grin, utterly oblivious to the reckoning that was coming. I caught Ethan's eye across the room and gave him a nod. Let the fireworks begin. With a few keystrokes, Tony hijacked the big screens flanking the stage. Suddenly, Keith's smiling face was replaced by images and footage documenting his endless trail of sins. The fraud, the abuse, the conning of innocent victims out of their life savings. I watched the color drain from his face as he realized what was happening. No, you can't do this. But it was too late. Linda was already striding towards the stage, her face contorted with years of pent-up fury. Hello, Keith, she spat venomously. Remember me? As he sputtered and backpedaled, more damning evidence filled the screens. Transcripts, audio recordings, all of it leading back to him. There was no wiggle room, no escape hatch this time. I stood tall, staring Keith down as security finally moved in to subdue his thrashing form. This is for my daughter, you sick son of a bitch, I called out, loud enough for the cameras to catch. Your reign of terror is over. Keith met my gaze then, and I saw the mask finally crack, revealing the depraved, soulless monster beneath. But I didn't flinch. I was done being afraid. As they dragged him away, I felt something loosen in my chest. A weight finally lifted after all these months of living in fear. My little girl was safe, and that twisted bastard would never be able to hurt another innocent life again. The days after our explosive expose of Keith's crimes were a whirlwind. Giving statements to the police, fielding a frenzy of media inquiries, and trying to shield Haley from the spotlight as much as possible. But through it all, I felt an immense sense of relief and vindication. That monster was finally behind bars where he could never hurt another innocent family again. Peter had been an absolute rock, keeping Haley occupied and reassuring her that the nightmare was over. I don't know what I would have done without his steady presence. You did it, Jenna, he said simply one evening as we watched Haley playing in the living room, mercifully oblivious to the weight we had all carried. You saved her. I managed a weary smile, suddenly feeling the full extent of the emotional trauma. We saved her, Pete. If you hadn't been there for us. He gave my hand a comforting squeeze, and I felt a pang of regret that things hadn't worked out between us as a couple. Peter was a good man, a great father, but I had been too obsessed with my career to make our marriage a priority when it mattered most. At least now, in the aftermath of this chaos, we could be united as co-parents for Haley's well-being. A firm knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. I tensed automatically. Too many months of living on edge, I supposed. But when I pulled it open, I saw Ethan's familiar, brooding expression. Hey! He shuffled awkwardly on the doorstep. I wanted to check in, see how you guys were doing. I studied Keith's son carefully. He had been through his own private hell, witnessing his father's depravity up close over the years. But in the end, Ethan had chosen the moral path, despite the risks. We're coping, I replied honestly. It's going to take some time to feel really safe again, you know? Ethan nodded, looking pained. Yeah, I get that. He drew a deep, shuddering breath. Look, I know I can't make up for the shit my dad put you through, but if you'll let me, I want to be here, you know? For Haley and... He trailed off, his jaw tightening. In that moment, I saw it, the longing for some semblance of family, of stability, underneath his prickly exterior. This poor kid had been starved of that his whole life, thanks to his father's toxicity. On impulse, I reached out and pulled Ethan into a fierce hug. He stiffened at first, then melted into the embrace with a quiet sigh. You're a part of this family now, kiddo, I murmured fiercely. We'll get through this together. There would still be plenty of hard days ahead, to be sure, wounds to mend, trust to rebuild. But in that moment I felt a sense of hope and determination well up in my chest. We had taken down the biggest demon of all. Whatever other battles awaited, we would face them head-on, unafraid, our little family of survivors bound by our scars yet standing tall. When I finally released Ethan, I saw the glimmer of tears in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away with a gruff nod. That was okay. We had all the time in the world now to learn how to heal and find our strength together. Come on in, I said with a soft smile, gesturing inside. There's someone who's going to be real happy to see her new big brother. As Haley came bounding over, her face lighting up at the sight of Ethan, I knew we were going to be all right. The nightmare was over. A new chapter was just beginning. In the weeks after Keith's dramatic downfall, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least some semblance of it. The non-stop media frenzy died down, the police wrapped up their investigation, and that sick, twisted chapter was finally closed. Of course, the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. I could see it in Haley's eyes sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking, that flicker of residual fear and uncertainty. My poor baby had her innocence shattered at such a tender age. But she was a resilient little fighter, my girl. With me, Peter, and even Ethan rallying around her, she found her sunshine again, bit by bit. Ethan, I'll admit, I had my doubts about him sticking around at first. The kid had been through his own private trauma thanks to his scumbag father. Who could blame him if he wanted to just cut and run from this ugly chapter? Instead, he stunned me by digging his heels in, determined to build a real relationship with Haley and be the supportive big brother figure she needed. They grew inseparable those first few months, playing endless rounds of make-believe and watching corny movies together. I'll never forget the night I caught them giggling secretly in the living room, Ethan's face unguardedly joyful as Haley smeared makeup all over his cheeks. Just a couple of silly kids being kids, without a care in the world. In that moment, my heart swelled with overwhelming gratitude that we had each other to lean on through the darkness. Of course, Peter was instrumental as well, my eternally patient ex-husband and co-parent. I lost count of how many times he dropped everything to rush over, whether it was fielding a night terror from Haley or just giving me a shoulder to cry on. "You don't have to thank me, Jen," he said simply one evening as we sat on the porch enjoying the tranquility. "I'll always be here for you two. That's never going to change." I felt a pang of wistfulness, thinking of what might have been if I had prioritized my little family over my all-consuming career years ago. Peter was a good man, a good father, maybe in another life, but I pushed those thoughts aside, giving him a grateful smile. "I know, and that means everything, Pete, really." As the summer days stretched on peacefully, I found myself slowly shedding the weight of fear and hypervigilance I'd carried for so long. The smiles came more easily, the laughter rang out more freely in our humble little home. One evening, I was putting Haley to bed when she stopped me shyly. "Mommy, can I give this to Ethan, to say thank you for being so nice?" She was clutching one of her prized possessions, a delicate wind chime made of bright seashells that Peter had brought back from a vacation years ago. Despite her young age, Haley understood the significance of such a gesture. I felt a lump form in my throat as I stroked her soft hair. "Of course you can, baby. I'm sure he'll love it." As I left her bedroom, I could see Ethan lingering in the hallway, his brooding expression softening just a touch as he watched his new little sister drift off to sleep. In that moment, I knew we had finally formed our own little family, a bit unconventional, a bit scarred, but bound by cords tougher than blood, loyal, protective, and absolutely unbreakable against any storm. I caught Ethan's eye and smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over me. The nightmare was finally over. All that remained was the warm, brilliant promise of new horizons ahead. As I drifted off to sleep that night, the gentle chiming of Haley's gift to Ethan echoed faintly, like a lullaby ushering in hopeful dreams. Our future was wide open, the possibilities endless, and we would face it together, steadfast survivors all. The crisp autumn air greeted me as I stepped out of my car, the familiar scent of freshly fallen leaves filling my lungs. Glancing up at the quaint two-story house where I had spent countless childhood summers, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. Little did I know that this unexpected return to my hometown would unravel a web of deceit that threatened to tear my family apart. "Lenore?" The gruff voice of my grandfather Gregor broke the silence. "What in God's name are you doing here?" I mustered a weak smile, trying to mask the turmoil bubbling within me. "It's a long story, Grandpa." His brow furrowed as he studied me intently, those piercing blue eyes seemingly peering into my soul. "Well, you'd better come inside and start talking." As we settled into the living room, the memories of simpler times flooded back, but my mind quickly snapped back to the present, the weight of my recent misfortunes pressing heavily upon me. My voice faltered, the words catching in my throat. "I lost everything, Grandpa." Gregor's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. "What do you mean? You lost everything?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the onslaught of questions. My business partner in New York, he betrayed me, swindled me out every last penny I had. Gregor's eyes narrowed, his skepticism palpable. And how exactly did this happen? As the details spilled forth, each revelation more damning than the last, I could see the disbelief etched across my grandfather's face. The way he looked at me, it was as if he didn't recognize the person sitting before him. So you're telling me that this snake conned you out of your life savings? Gregor shook his head, his voice laced with disappointment. I thought I raised you smarter than that, girl. His words stung like a slap to the face. But I couldn't blame him. The weight of my naivety crushed me, the shame burning hot in my cheeks. I know, Grandpa. I know. My voice trembled, the tears threatening to spill over. But I swear, I had no idea he was capable of such deceit. Gregor's gaze softened ever so slightly, but the skepticism remained. Well, you're here now. We'll figure this mess out, one way or another. As he rose from his chair, a heavy silence hung in the air, unspoken questions lingering like ghosts. Little did we know, this was merely the beginning of a much darker truth that would shake the very foundations of our family. The weight of Gregor's words hung heavy in the air as we sat in silence, the ticking of the grandfather clock echoing through the room like a metronome counting down the seconds until the next bombshell dropped. Little did I know, the revelations that followed would shatter what little remained of my trust in those closest to me. Gregor cleared his throat, his expression grave. Lenore, there's something I need to tell you. I steeled myself, bracing for yet another harsh truth to come crashing down upon me. You know about the inheritance your grandma left you, right? He began, his voice low and somber. I nodded, my brow furrowing in confusion. Of course, you've always taken care of managing it for me. Gregor's jaw clenched and he averted his gaze as if struggling to find the right words. That's just it, kid. I haven't been managing it, not for years now. My heart skipped a beat, a knot forming in the pit of my stomach. What are you saying, Grandpa? He sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping with the weight of whatever burden he carried. Your Uncle Hal, he's been handling the finances, and it seems he's been helping himself to more than his fair share. The floor seemed to drop out from beneath me as the weight of his words sank in. Uncle Hal, the man I had looked up to as a child, the one who had always seemed so generous and caring, had been stealing from me all along. How is that possible? I stammered, my hands trembling. Why would he do such a thing? Gregor shook his head, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. I don't know, kid. I trusted him, too. Gave him full control over the accounts years ago when my health started failing. The sense of betrayal cut deep, like a knife twisting in my gut. Not only had I been swindled by a business partner, but now it seemed my own flesh and blood had been deceiving me as well. Do you have any idea how much is missing? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Gregor's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. Enough to make my blood boil, that's for damn sure. In that moment, a fire ignited within me, a burning desire for justice and retribution. Uncle Hal had not only stolen from me, but he had violated the sacred trust of family, and for that he would pay dearly. As Gregor laid out the evidence he had uncovered, the suspicious transactions, the lavish purchases, the blatant disregard for our financial well-being, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I would not rest until every last penny was accounted for, and Uncle Hal was held responsible for his despicable actions. With a steely determination etched across my face, I met Gregor's gaze. Don't worry, Grandpa. We're going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes. The sense of betrayal burned like acid, eating away at my insides, as Mom and I pored over the financial records Gregor had uncovered. With each damning transaction, each suspicious investment, the full extent of Uncle Hal's deceit became glaringly apparent. I can't believe this, Mom muttered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. How could he do this to his own family? I shook my head, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Greed, Mom, pure and simple. The paper trail spoke volumes, painting a vivid picture of Uncle Hal's lavish lifestyle. The luxury cars, the extravagant vacations, the ostentatious home renovations, all funded by the very inheritance meant to secure our family's future. Look at these investment portfolios, I said, sliding a stack of documents across the table. He's been gambling our money away on high-risk ventures, chasing get-rich-quick schemes. Mom's eyes widened as she scanned the pages, her expression darkening with each line she read. This is reckless, irresponsible, unforgivable. A heavy silence fell between us, the weight of Uncle Hal's betrayal hanging thick in the air. We had trusted him implicitly, never suspecting that the very man tasked with safeguarding our legacy was systematically dismantling it from the inside. We have to stop him, I said, my voice low and resolute. We have to make him pay for what he's done. Mom's eyes met mine, a steely determination reflecting back at me. Absolutely, but we need ironclad proof, something he can't weasel his way out of. As we strategized late into the night, the path forward became clear. We would have to set a trap, lure Uncle Hal into a false sense of security, and catch him in the act. It was a risky gambit, but one we were willing to take to ensure justice was served. In the days that followed, we meticulously gathered evidence, documenting every transaction, every financial maneuver Uncle Hal had made. The stack of incriminating paperwork grew thicker with each passing hour, a damning testament to the depths of his greed and deceit. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. We arranged a family dinner under the guise of clearing the air, inviting Uncle Hal under the pretense of reconciliation. Little did he know, we had laid the perfect trap, one that would expose his misdeeds and leave him with nowhere to hide. As he strode through the door, a smarmy grin plastered across his face, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. This was it, the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally confront the man who had betrayed us all. "Lenore, darling," Uncle Hal exclaimed, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "It's so good to see you." I forced a smile, steeling myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. "Uncle Hal, we have a lot to discuss." The tension in the air was palpable as we gathered around the table, Uncle Hal's false bravado doing little to mask the unease that radiated from him. It was as if he could sense the trap closing in, but his arrogance blinded him to the truth. "So, what's this all about?" he asked, flashing that smarmy grin that had once charmed so many. "I thought we were here for a nice family dinner." I exchanged a glance with Mom, our resolve steeled by the mountain of evidence we had amassed. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally confront the man who had betrayed us all. "We know what you've been doing, Hal," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "The embezzlement, the shady investments, the lavish spending, it all stops now." Uncle Hal's face contorted into a mask of feigned confusion, his eyes darting between us like a cornered animal seeking an escape. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lenore. This is preposterous." Mom slid a thick file across the table, the damning paperwork spilling out like a twisted confetti of deceit. "We have proof, Hal. Bank statements, investment portfolios, receipts, all documenting your every move." For a brief moment, Uncle Hal's composure faltered, his mask of indignation slipping ever so slightly. But he quickly regained his footing, his lips curling into a sneer of contempt. "So what? You think you can just accuse me and expect me to roll over?" He spat, his voice dripping with venom. "This is my family's money, and I'll do with it as I see fit." The sheer audacity of his words hit me like a physical blow, the depth of his selfishness and entitlement laying bare for all to see. In that moment, any lingering shred of familial loyalty evaporated, replaced by a burning desire for justice. "How dare you?" I fired back, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "That money was never yours to take. It was meant to secure our future, our legacy, and you've been systematically dismantling it for your own personal gain." Uncle Hal's face twisted into a sneer of contempt, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure hatred. "You ungrateful little brat," he snarled. "After everything I've done for this family, this is how you repay me?" The air seemed to crackle with tension as our voices escalated, the once civil dinner devolving into a bitter showdown of wills. Accusations flew back and forth, each one more scathing than the last, until finally, Uncle Hal's mask of control shattered completely. "You want to know the truth?" he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "I did it all for you, for this pathetic excuse of a family. Everything I've done was to keep us afloat, to maintain the lifestyle we deserve." The sheer audacity of his words left me reeling, the depths of his delusion and self-justification laying bare for all to see. In that moment, I knew there was no reasoning with him, no shred of remorse or redemption to be found. As the din of our confrontation echoed through the room, I caught sight of Gregor's ashen face, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and sorrow. It was then that I realized the true cost of Uncle Hal's betrayal. The rift it had torn through our once close-knit family, the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. But even in the midst of that turmoil, a single thought burned bright within me. Uncle Hal would pay for his actions, no matter what it took. The wheels of justice had been set in motion, and there would be no turning back. The fallout from our explosive confrontation with Uncle Hal was swift and severe. In the days that followed, word of his betrayal spread like wildfire through our small town, igniting a firestorm of gossip and judgment. Some rallied behind us, offering words of support and condemning Uncle Hal's actions. Others, however, remained steadfastly loyal to him, clinging to the facade of success he had so carefully cultivated over the years. How could he do this to his own family? Aunt Peggy lamented, her eyes brimming with tears. After everything we've been through together. Uncle Hal's younger brother, Todd, was less forgiving. That snake always had a talent for charming his way into people's wallets, he spat, his voice laced with contempt. I just never thought he'd stoop so low as to steal from his own blood. As the divisions within our family deepened, the strain became palpable. Thanksgiving dinners were boycotted, Christmas gatherings canceled, the once unbreakable bonds of kinship fraying under the weight of Uncle Hal's deceit. Through it all, I remained resolute, steeling myself against the onslaught of whispers and sideways glances that seemed to follow me wherever I went. The sympathizers, the enablers, the holier-than-thou busybodies who couldn't resist sticking their noses where they didn't belong. Their judgments rolled off me like water off a duck's back. My focus was singular, ensuring Uncle Hal faced the consequences of his actions, no matter what it took. Mom, bless her, was my rock through it all. Don't let them get to you, honey, she'd say, wrapping her arm around me in a reassuring embrace. We're doing the right thing, and that's all that matters. Still, the strain of the whole ordeal began to take its toll. Sleepless nights plagued me, my mind racing with scenarios, contingency plans, and worst-case outcomes. I found myself jumping at every unexpected sound, my nerves frayed to their breaking point. Then, one crisp autumn morning, everything changed. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the silence like a knife, jolting me from a fitful slumber. Gregor's gruff voice crackled through the line, his tone laced with urgency. Lenore, you need to get over here. Now. Without a moment's hesitation, I threw on whatever clothes were within reach and raced over to Gregor's house, my heart pounding in my chest. What I found there would forever alter the course of our quest for justice. Gregor ushered me inside, his face ashen and drawn. It's Hal, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He's gone too far this time. In the living room, a scene of utter chaos greeted me. Furniture lay overturned, picture frames shattered, and in the midst of it all, a chilling message scrawled across the wall in what appeared to be red paint. You'll regret this, you ungrateful brats. A chill ran down my spine as I took in the words, their menacing implications hanging heavy in the air. Uncle Hal had crossed a line, and in that moment, I knew there would be no turning back. As I surveyed the wreckage, a steely resolve settled over me. Uncle Hal had made his move, and now it was our turn to strike back. The gloves were off, and the stakes had just been raised. This was no longer about recouping financial losses. It was about protecting our family, our dignity, and our very lives. Uncle Hal had declared war, and we would answer his challenge with everything we had. The chilling message scrawled across Gregor's wall was a stark reminder that Uncle Hal's depravity knew no bounds. But rather than cowering in fear, it only fueled my determination to bring him to justice, no matter the cost. As Mom and I huddled with Gregor, formulating our next move, a plan began to take shape. A bold, audacious gambit that would require precision timing and nerves of steel. We need to catch him in the act, I said, my voice low and resolute. Get him to incriminate himself in a way that can't be denied or twisted. Gregor nodded slowly, his brow furrowed in contemplation. A sting operation of sorts? Exactly, I replied, the pieces falling into place. We'll lure him in with the promise of a deal, make him think he's getting away with it all. But this time, we'll be the ones holding the cards. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, dotting every I and crossing every T to ensure our plan was airtight. We enlisted the help of a trusted private investigator, arranging for state-of-the-art recording equipment to be installed in Gregor's living room, the very scene of Uncle Hal's unhinged outburst. Finally, the stage was set. A carefully worded message was sent to Uncle Hal, inviting him over to discuss a resolution to our familial conflict. The bait was laid, and all we could do was wait with bated breath. The appointed hour arrived, and with it, the sound of Uncle Hal's car pulling into the driveway. My heart pounded in my chest as Mom and I took our positions, tucked away in the adjacent study with the investigator, monitoring the live audio feed. Uncle Hal sauntered in, his usual cocky swagger on full display. "All right, I'm here," he announced, casting a disdainful glance around the room. "What's this all about?" Gregor cleared his throat, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "Hal, we've been talking, and we think it's time to put all this ugliness behind us." A derisive snort escaped Uncle Hal's lips. "Is that so? And what, pray tell, did you have in mind?" "A settlement," Gregor replied, his words measured and deliberate. "A clean slate, if you will. You return what you've taken, and we can move forward as a family again." A tense silence hung in the air as Uncle Hal mulled over the offer, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Finally, he let out a low chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. "You really think it's that simple, old man?" he sneered. "That I'd just hand over everything I've worked for, all because you and your ungrateful brats threw a little temper tantrum?" The venom in his words was palpable, his true colors shining through like a neon sign. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to catch him in his own web of lies and deceit. "We have proof, Hal," Gregor pressed, his voice steady and unwavering. "Reams of evidence documenting your every move. It's over." Uncle Hal's face contorted into a mask of rage, his composure shattering like a fragile glass. "You stupid old fool," he snarled. "Did you really think you could outsmart me? I've been running circles around you for years." The confession poured forth in a torrent of vitriol, each word more damning than the last. Uncle Hal laid bare the intricate schemes he had woven, the lengths he had gone to fleece our family of our hard-earned legacy. And through it all, the recording captured every sordid detail, preserving his unraveling for posterity. As his tirade finally wound down, Uncle Hal's chest heaved with exertion, his eyes wild and unfocused. It was then that the realization seemed to dawn on him. The trap had been sprung, and he was well and truly caught. A sickly pallor crept across his features as Gregor fixed him with a steely glare. "It's all on tape, Hal," he said, his voice laced with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. Every last word. In that moment, the full weight of Uncle Hal's downfall seemed to crash down upon him, the consequences of his greed and hubris finally catching up to him in spectacular fashion. And as Mom and I emerged from our hiding place, united in our resolve, one thing became abundantly clear. The tides had turned, and justice was finally within our grasp. The incriminating evidence we had gathered, coupled with Uncle Hal's own damning confession, was a devastating blow, but the battle was far from over. We knew that in order to truly achieve justice, we would need to confront him head-on, lay bare his misdeeds for the entire family to witness. And so, with steely determination, we prepared for the ultimate showdown. Gregor, ever the master strategist, devised a plan to lure Uncle Hal to a seemingly innocuous family dinner under the guise of clearing the air. Little did the serpent know we had something far more explosive in store. The appointed evening arrived, and as the rest of our extended family filtered into Gregor's home, the air was thick with tension. Hushed whispers and sideways glances betrayed the undercurrent of suspicion and mistrust that had taken root in the wake of Uncle Hal's transgressions. And then, like a darkened cloud rolling in, he made his entrance, all bravado and false smiles, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. "Ah, there's my loving family," he crowed, spreading his arms wide in a mockery of affection. "I'm so glad we could all come together and put this ugliness behind us." I fought back the urge to spit in his face, my hands clenching into tight fists at my sides. The audacity of the man to waltz in as if he hadn't just been caught red-handed in his own web of lies and deceit. But I held my tongue, exchanging a knowing glance with Mom and Gregor. The time for talk was over. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the chance to expose Uncle Hal's true colors for all to see. As the meal progressed, the tension in the room grew thicker by the minute. Uncle Hal regaled us with story after story, each one more grandiose than the last, his false charm oozing from every pore. It was sickening to watch, this master manipulator at work, and yet the knowledge that his downfall was imminent made it all the more bearable. Finally, as the plates were cleared and the last drops of wine drained from our glasses, Gregor rose to his feet, his gaze fixed squarely on Uncle Hal. "Well, now that we're all here, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. Uncle Hal's bravado faltered for a brief moment, a flicker of unease passing across his features. But he quickly recovered, plastering on that smarmy grin that had once charmed so many. Of course," he replied, waving a dismissive hand. "Let's get it all out in the open, shall we?" Little did he know, we were about to blow his world wide open. With a single nod, Gregor signaled to me, and I reached into my bag, retrieving the damning audio recording that would seal Uncle Hal's fate. As the opening bars of his own voice filled the room, spewing forth a vile litany of confessions and admissions of guilt, a hush fell over the gathered family. Shock and disbelief etched itself onto their faces as the full extent of Uncle Hal's betrayal unfolded before them. And through it all, Uncle Hal remained frozen in place, his complexion growing paler with every passing second as the noose of justice tightened around his neck. When the final damning words had played out, a deafening silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of Uncle Hal's ragged breathing. "Well, Hal?" Gregor's voice cut through the stillness like a knife. "Anything to add?" For once in his miserable life, Uncle Hal seemed well and truly speechless, his mask of control shattered beyond repair. As the weight of his crimes bore down upon him, his eyes darted around the room, desperately seeking an ally, a sympathetic face, but found none. The family that had once rallied behind him had finally seen the truth, and there was no turning back. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of vindication wash over me. The man who had so callously betrayed our trust, our loyalty, our very livelihood, was finally being held accountable. And as the shock and horror gave way to a chorus of condemnation from our gathered loved ones, one thing became abundantly clear. Uncle Hal's reign of deceit and manipulation had finally come to an end. Justice, at long last, had been served. In the aftermath of Uncle Hal's spectacular downfall, a strange calm settled over our family. The storm of anger and betrayal had finally passed, leaving in its wake a sense of resolution and a renewed determination to pick up the pieces and move forward. Of course, the legal ramifications were swift and severe. Uncle Hal found himself facing a litany of charges, from embezzlement and fraud to grand larceny. His once charmed life came crashing down around him, his ill-gotten gains seized and his reputation in tatters. As for the financial restitution, Uncle Hal was forced to liquidate every asset he had acquired through his deceitful schemes. Every last penny was meticulously accounted for and returned to its rightful place, the family's legacy, the inheritance he had so callously plundered. It was a bittersweet victory, to be sure. While the relief of having our hard-earned legacy restored was palpable, the pain of Uncle Hal's betrayal still cut deep. The trust that had once bound our family together had been shattered, and the road to healing would be a long and arduous one. But heal we did, slowly but surely. Gregor, ever the wise patriarch, took the first steps by relinquishing control of the family's finances to a team of professional advisors and trustees. No longer would the temptation of unchecked power lead someone down the path of greed and corruption. "I failed you all," he admitted, his voice heavy with remorse. "I let my pride blind me to the truth, and for that I am deeply sorry." It was a humbling moment, one that resonated deeply with all of us who had been caught in Uncle Hal's web of deception. We had all been guilty of blind trust, of believing that blood ties were thicker than the lure of easy money. But from that collective pain came a hard-won lesson, a renewed commitment to vigilance, to accountability, and to the unwavering pursuit of truth, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable. As for me, the entire ordeal had opened my eyes to a harsh reality, that even those closest to us are capable of unimaginable acts of selfishness and cruelty. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one that ultimately steeled my resolve and sharpened my instincts. In the months that followed, I found myself drawn to the world of financial literacy and advocacy. I saw firsthand how a lack of education and transparency could pave the way for exploitation, and I was determined to do my part in shedding light on these issues. It started small, with workshops and seminars aimed at empowering individuals to take control of their financial futures. But as word spread of my own harrowing experience, the demand for my expertise grew. Before long, I found myself speaking at conferences and events across the country, sharing my story and imparting the hard-won lessons I had learned. It was a calling I had never expected, but one that filled me with a sense of purpose and redemption. And through it all, my family remained by my side, a united front forged in the crucible of Uncle Hal's betrayal. We had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. As I looked back on the tumultuous journey that had brought us to this point, one thing became abundantly clear. While the path to justice had been fraught with pain and heartbreak, the ultimate victory was worth every struggle. Uncle Hal's downfall had not only restored our financial legacy, but had ignited a fire within each of us. A burning desire to live with integrity, to hold ourselves and those around us accountable, and to never again allow the insidious forces of greed and deception to take root. It was a hard-won triumph, but one that would echo through the generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of truth, perseverance, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The dim-lit winery felt suffocating as I nursed my glass of Merlot, the rich aroma failing to calm my nerves. Mia's concerned gaze bore into me, her brow furrowed as she waited for me to break the tense silence. "It's Adrian," I finally confessed, my voice trembling. "He's been lying to me about everything." Mia's eyes widened, and she leaned closer, her voice hushed. "What do you mean? What happened?" I took a steadying breath, recounting the events from earlier that evening. I arrived a little early, hoping to surprise him before the tasting event started, but when I stepped into his office, I overheard a heated argument. The memory flooded back, Adrian's usually composed demeanor shattered as he hissed into the phone. "Kara, please, you have to understand." "Kara?" Mia's brow furrowed deeper. "Isn't that his wife's name?" I nodded, my throat tightening. That's when she walked in. This stunning woman, dripping in diamonds and designer labels. She took one look at me and sneered, "So, you're the latest conquest, hmm?" Tears stung my eyes as I recalled Kara's icy glare. Adrian tried to defuse the situation, but she wasn't having it. She turned to me and said, "Let me save you the trouble, dear. That man is a pathological liar, and you're just another pawn in his twisted game." Mia's mouth hung open, her hand gripping mine in a comforting squeeze. "Oh, Lena, I'm so sorry." I shook my head, anger and humiliation swirling within me. "That's not even the worst part." Kara then looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you think you know the real Adrian, you're sadly mistaken. But don't worry, you'll find out soon enough." Mia's grip tightened, her expression a mix of sympathy and fury. That's just cruel. What did Adrian say?" "He tried to brush it off, claiming Kara was just being dramatic as usual," I scoffed, the memory leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. But the way she looked at me, Mia, it was like she knew something I didn't, like she was daring me to uncover the truth. Mia's eyes narrowed, her protective instincts kicking in. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Lena. One way or another, we'll find out what kind of game Adrian is really playing." As I drained the last of my wine, a newfound determination washed over me. Kara's enigmatic warning echoed in my mind, fueling a desperate need to confront the man I thought I knew. Adrian's web of lies was unraveling, and I intended to untangle every last thread, no matter how painful the truth might be. Adrian's mansion loomed before me, its grand facade mocking the turmoil that churned within. As I stepped through the ornate double doors, the overwhelming scent of wealth assaulted my senses, a sickening blend of expensive leather and Adrian's signature cologne. He greeted me with a forced smile, his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. "Lena, my dear, I'm so glad you came." I held up a hand, cutting off his rehearsed pleasantries. "Cut the act, Adrian. We need to talk." His bravado faltered, and he ushered me into the study, closing the door behind us with a heavy thud. "I assume this is about Kara's little outburst," he began, his tone dripping with disdain. "You know how dramatic she can be." Dramatic? I scoffed, anger flaring within me. She accused you of lying to me, Adrian, of using me as some kind of pawn in your twisted games. He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. Lena, you have to understand. My marriage to Kara, it's complicated. We've been struggling for years, and her family's wealth is the only thing keeping this winery afloat. My jaw clenched as the pieces began to fall into place. So, what? You've been using her money to fund your lavish lifestyle, all while carrying on affairs behind her back? Adrian's eyes hardened, his mask of charm slipping. It's not that simple. Kara knew about my indiscretions from the start, but she didn't care, as long as I played the part of the doting husband in public. It's all a facade, Lena. A game we've both been playing. I recoiled, disgust churning in my stomach. And what about me, Adrian? Was I just another prop in your twisted little charade? He reached for my hand, his touch sending a shiver of revulsion down my spine. Of course not, my love. What we have is real. Everything I've done, it's all been for us, for our future together. I yanked my hand away, his words like venom seeping into my veins. Our future? I spat, shaking my head in disbelief. How can you talk about our future when you've built your entire life on lies? Adrian's jaw tightened, his eyes hardening with determination. Because I love you, Lena, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make our dreams a reality. As he spoke those words, a chill ran down my spine. The man before me was a stranger, his charming facade crumbling to reveal a twisted, manipulative soul. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how deep my feelings ran, I could never trust a word that fell from his deceitful lips. The harsh buzz of my phone jolted me from my restless slumber. Groggily, I fumbled for the device, squinting at the caller ID. It was Mia. Hello? My voice was thick with exhaustion. Lena, thank God you picked up, Mia blurted, her tone laced with urgency. We need to talk, in person. An icy tendril of dread snaked through me. What's going on? It's about Adrian, she said, her voice dropping to a hushed whisper. I've uncovered some unsettling information. Within the hour, I found myself at Mia's doorstep, anxiety gnawing at my insides. She ushered me inside, her expression grave. Spill it, I demanded, bracing myself for the worst. Mia took a deep breath. Remember Samantha Wilkins from college? The one who transferred after our sophomore year? I nodded, my brow furrowing in confusion. Well, I ran into her at the grocery store yesterday, Mia continued, and she mentioned something. Disturbing. My heart pounded in my ears as I waited for her to continue. Apparently, she and Adrian had a fling a few years back, Mia revealed, her words like a punch to the gut. And according to Samantha, he was stringing along multiple women at the same time, feeding them all the same lies about leaving his wife. I felt the room spin, nausea churning in my stomach. No, it can't be. Mia's expression hardened. That's not all. Samantha said that once Kara caught wind of Adrian's affairs, she went into full-on revenge mode. She's been gathering evidence, documenting every sordid detail, all to strip him of everything in their inevitable divorce. My head was reeling, Adrian's betrayal cutting deeper with each revelation. But why go to such extremes? Mia's gaze softened. Kara's family is obscenely wealthy, Lena. If she plays her cards right, she could not only take the winery but destroy Adrian's reputation in the process. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. So while he's been playing us all for fools, his wife has been playing the long game. Mia reached out, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. I'm so sorry, Lena. I know how much you cared for him. Tears stung my eyes as the weight of Adrian's deceit crashed over me. The man I thought I knew, the future I had envisioned, it was all a lie. A carefully constructed mirage designed to feed his insatiable ego and greed. But as the shock gave way to simmering rage, a newfound determination took root. Kara's methodical plotting had opened my eyes, and I silently vowed that Adrian would face the consequences of his actions. No matter what it took, I would ensure that he reaped the bitter harvest he had sown. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the cozy cafe, but its usual comforting scent did little to soothe my frayed nerves. I clutched my mug, the warmth seeping into my palms as I replayed Mia's words in my mind, desperate to make sense of Adrian's ever-deepening web of lies. A familiar voice sliced through the ambient chatter, causing me to stiffen in my seat. It was Kara, her perfectly coiffed appearance a stark contrast to the icy venom dripping from her words. That snake has another thing coming, if he thinks I'll let him slither away unscathed, she hissed, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the tabletop. Across from her sat a well-dressed man, his sharp features and calculating gaze marking him as a force to be reckoned with, no doubt Kara's attorney. "Rest assured, Mrs. Bellamy," he replied, his tone clipped and professional. "My team has compiled an ironclad case against your husband. Once we expose his sordid affairs and financial misdeeds, the courts will have no choice but to strip him of everything." Kara's crimson-painted lips curved into a vindictive smile. "Good. That two-timing snake deserves to lose it all, his precious winery, his inflated ego, every last cent." My heart pounded in my chest as realization washed over me. This wasn't just a bitter divorce. It was a meticulously orchestrated takedown, and Adrian was the unfortunate target in Kara's crosshairs. "And those whores he's been cavorting with?" Kara sneered, her eyes glinting with malice. "They'll get their just desserts, too. I want their dirty little secrets dragged out into the open for everyone to see." My blood ran cold, the implications of her words sinking in like a lead weight. She wasn't just after Adrian. She was coming for all of us, his unsuspecting conquests caught in the crossfire of her vengeful crusade. The lawyer nodded, his expression betraying no emotion. "Consider it done, Mrs. Bellamy. Your husband's indiscretions will be laid bare for the world to witness." As they rose to leave, Kara's gaze momentarily locked with mine, her eyes narrowing in recognition. A cruel smirk played at the corners of her mouth, a silent taunt that sent a chill down my spine. In that fleeting moment, I understood the depth of her fury, the meticulously plotted retribution that would leave no stone unturned, no secret unexposed. And as the gravity of my own role in Adrian's downfall dawned on me, a single sobering thought took root. I was well and truly caught in the crosshairs of a war I never saw coming. The winery's grand hall buzzed with excitement as guests mingled, sipping flutes of our latest vintage. But beneath the laughter and polished veneers, a storm was brewing, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of Adrian's carefully constructed facade. I spotted him across the room, his charming smile firmly in place as he worked the crowd like a seasoned performer. My heart clenched with a potent mix of anger and remorse, the weight of his betrayal threatening to suffocate me. Before I could second-guess myself, I strode toward him, weaving through the clusters of well-heeled socialites until I stood mere feet away. "Adrian," I called out, my voice ringing with steely resolve. He turned, his easy grin faltering as our eyes met. "Lena, darling, what a pleasure to—" "Cut the act," I snapped, my words slicing through his rehearsed pleasantries. "We need to talk, in private." His brow furrowed, but he nodded, leading me through a side door and into the shadowed confines of the empty barrel room. The heavy thud of the door closing behind us seemed to echo off the weathered oak, underscoring the weight of the confrontation to come. Adrian's mask slipped, his expression hardening. "What's this about, Lena? You're causing quite a scene." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "A scene? Please, Adrian, we both know this entire charade is one big performance." I stepped closer, my words laced with venom. "I know everything. The lies, the affairs, Kara's meticulous plan to strip you of everything you've built on deceit." His eyes widened, panic flickering across his features before he regained his composure. "Lena, whatever Kara has told you, it's not just Kara," I cut him off, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "I've heard it from others, too, people you've used and discarded like pawns in your twisted games." Adrian's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. "I see. So, you've chosen to align yourself with my vengeful wife, is that it?" I matched his steely glare, undeterred. "I've chosen to stand against your lies, Adrian, against the web of manipulation you've spun, ensnaring anyone foolish enough to fall for your charms." His lips curved into a contemptuous sneer. "And what, pray tell, do you hope to gain from this misguided crusade? A pat on the back from Kara? A fleeting sense of vindication before she casts you aside like the rest of us?" I stepped closer, my voice lowering to a fierce whisper. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions, Adrian. I want you to reap what you've sown, the pain, the humiliation, the utter destruction of everything you've built on deceit." For a moment, Adrian's mask slipped, his eyes flickering with genuine fear. But just as quickly, his bravado returned, a cruel smirk twisting his features. "Very well, my dear. he purred, his voice laced with menace. "If it's a war you want, you'll have it. But mark my words, when the dust settles, you'll deeply regret throwing in your lot with Kara." As he turned on his heel and stormed out, I couldn't help but shiver at the ominous promise lingering in his wake. But any trepidation was overshadowed by a fierce determination, a resolve to see this bitter feud through to its inevitable, catastrophic end. Come what may, Adrian would face the consequences he so richly deserved. And I would be there, standing resolute to witness his downfall. The stale air of the courtroom hung heavy, charged with tension as I took my place on the witness stand. Across the aisle, Adrian sat rigidly, his once charming veneer cracked and fading under the harsh reality of his impending reckoning. Kara's attorney, Mr. Morris, approached me, his gaze steely and calculating. "Ms. Rivers, please state your relationship to the defendant." I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. Adrian Bellamy and I were involved in an intimate relationship for nearly a year. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, but Morris silenced it with a sharp look. "And during this time, were you aware of Mr. Bellamy's marital status?" My jaw tightened. "No, Adrian deliberately misled me, claiming he was separated from his wife." Morris nodded, his expression grave. "I see. And when did you become aware of the true nature of his deception?" The memories flooded back, the confrontation at the winery, the sickening revelations about Adrian's multiple affairs. It was brought to my attention by Mrs. Bellamy herself, as well as other sources, that Adrian had been engaging in numerous extramarital affairs while portraying a very different public image. "Objection, Your Honor," Adrian's lawyer barked, jumping to his feet. "Hearsay and speculation." The judge fixed me with a stern look. "Ms. Rivers, please confine your testimony to first-hand knowledge and facts." I took a steadying breath. "Very well, what I can attest to is Adrian's pattern of dishonest behavior and blatant disregard for the truth. He lied to me repeatedly about the nature of his marriage, his financial situation, and his intentions for our future together." Morris nodded, his expression grim. "Thank you, Miss Rivers. No further questions for now." He turned to face the judge. "Your Honor, we would like to submit into evidence a series of documented communications between the defendant and various other women, demonstrating a clear pattern of infidelity and emotional manipulation." As the damning evidence was presented, I risked a glance at Adrian. His usual bravado had crumbled, his shoulders slumped in defeat as the weight of his transgressions bore down upon him. Morris continued his relentless assault, painting a vivid picture of Adrian's web of lies and the calculated efforts to conceal his indiscretions from his wife. With each revelation, each incriminating piece of evidence, the noose around Adrian's neck tightened. Finally, Morris turned to me once more. "Miss Rivers, in your opinion, based on your first-hand experience, what motivated the defendant's actions?" I took a deep breath, meeting Adrian's hollow gaze head-on. "Greed and ego," I stated firmly. "Adrian Bellamy is a man consumed by his own desires, willing to crush anyone and anything in his path to maintain his lavish lifestyle and inflated sense of self-worth." A deafening silence fell over the courtroom as my words hung in the air, their weight undeniable. In that moment, I saw the last remnants of Adrian's arrogant facade shatter, laying bare the ugly truth that had been festering beneath the surface all along. As I stepped down from the stand, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. The wheels of justice were in motion, and Adrian's carefully constructed house of cards was crumbling around him. After so many lies, so much pain and heartache, he would finally face the consequences of his actions. The cavernous interior of Adrian's once opulent home echoed with a deafening silence, its grand furnishings and lavish decor now mere relics of a life built on deceit. As I stepped into the dimly lit foyer, the weight of his downfall seemed palpable, a tangible presence hanging in the stale air. "Lena?" Kara's voice sliced through the stillness, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she emerged from the shadows. "I'm glad you could make it." I nodded, my gaze drifting to the packed boxes lining the walls. "So, it's really happening. He's losing everything." A ghost of a smile played across Kara's perfectly painted lips. "Oh, it's far more than that, my dear. Adrian's reckoning has been a long time coming." She beckoned me to follow, leading me into the study, where Adrian had once spun his tangled web of lies. The remnants of his former life were scattered about, half-empty bottles of scotch, framed photos lying face down, a forgotten cigar smoldering in an ashtray. Do you know why I fought so hard to strip him of all this? Kara mused, her fingers trailing along the edge of the ornately carved desk. It wasn't just about the money or the winery. It was about unveiling the truth, about tearing down the facade he so carefully constructed. I tensed, sensing an undercurrent of something darker lurking beneath her words. What do you mean? Kara's gaze found mine, her eyes glinting with a chilling intensity. I knew about his affairs from the beginning, Lena. Every sordid tryst, every empty promise whispered in the throes of passion. I catalogued it all, biding my time until the perfect moment to strike. A shiver ran down my spine as the full extent of her meticulously plotted revenge dawned on me. You used me, us, all of his mistresses, just pawns in your game. Her delicate shoulders rose in an elegant shrug. A necessary sacrifice, I'm afraid. You see, Adrian's greatest downfall wasn't his insatiable appetite for infidelity. It was his arrogance, his unwavering belief that he could continue to spin his lies indefinitely without consequence. I recoiled, sickened by the calculated cruelty behind her actions. So, what? You decided to teach him a lesson by destroying not just his life, but the lives of anyone caught in the crossfire? Kara's gaze hardened, her voice taking on a razor-sharp edge. Some lessons, dear Lena, can only be learned through the harshest of methods. Adrian needed to lose everything, his wealth, his status, his fragile sense of superiority, and if collateral damage was unavoidable in that pursuit, then so be it. As her words hung in the air, I found myself questioning the lines between justice and retribution, vengeance and vindication. Kara's actions, however calculated, had left a trail of devastation in their wake. Lives upended, reputations shattered, all in service of her single-minded quest for revenge. And in that moment, as I stood amidst the ruins of Adrian's former life, I couldn't help but wonder, had we, his unwitting pawns, simply traded one devil for another? The crisp autumn breeze carried the faint scent of change as I settled onto the worn leather couch, my therapist's gentle gaze fixed upon me with a patient understanding. It had been months since the explosive downfall of Adrian Bellamy, and yet the reverberations of that tumultuous chapter still echoed within me. How are you feeling today, Lena? Dr. Wilkins prompted, her voice a soothing balm against the memories that threatened to resurface. I took a steadying breath, gathering my thoughts. Better, I think. It's been a process, coming to terms with everything that happened. Her brow furrowed with concern. The sense of betrayal must have been overwhelming, not just from Adrian but from Kara as well, using you and the others as pawns in her revenge. A rueful smile tugged at my lips. That's an understatement. For a while I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies and manipulation, unable to trust my own judgment. Dr. Wilkins nodded, her expression one of quiet empathy. Yet here you are, emerging from that storm stronger and wiser. What has helped you find solid ground again? The answer came easily, a newfound sense of purpose burning brightly within me. Helping others who have been through similar situations, lending an understanding ear, offering guidance and resources, it's been cathartic in a way. A proud smile graced the therapist's features. That's wonderful, Lena. Turning your pain into a catalyst for positive change is an incredibly brave and selfless act. As our session drew to a close, I stepped out into the crisp air, inhaling deeply. The weight that had once threatened to crush me had lightened, replaced by a steely resolve and a profound sense of growth. Later that evening, as I sipped a glass of rich Cabernet, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mia, her voice tinged with a mix of sympathy and triumph. Lena, did you hear? Adrian's been spotted, living out of a run-down motel on the outskirts of town. A pang of something indescribable tugged at my heart, a strange amalgam of pity and vindication. The man who had once commanded such wealth and prestige had been reduced to a shadow of his former self, his grand ambitions crumbling beneath the weight of his own misdeeds. I did hear, yeah, I replied, my voice steady. It's a lot to take in, seeing how far he's fallen. Mia's tone softened. Are you going to be okay? I know this whole ordeal has been incredibly difficult for you. A soft, resolute smile curved my lips as I gazed out at the setting sun, its warm hues painting the sky in vibrant shades of redemption. I'm going to be just fine, Mia. In fact, I've never felt more ready to embrace the future, one free from Adrian's twisted lies and the toxic cycles of deceit. As I uttered those words, a profound sense of peace washed over me, a quiet affirmation that the darkest chapters of our lives possess the power to reshape us, to forge us into beacons of strength and resilience. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear. I would never again surrender my truth to the whims of those who sought to diminish it. Adrian's reign of deception had met its demise, and in its ashes, a fiercer, wiser version of myself was rising, ready to face the world on my own terms.